Welcome to episode 104 of the Coast Coast AFL podcast, Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and in this one, it was a very weird round. We got our first ever draw of the season right on Thursday night between Collingwood and Hawthorn. Richmond recorded their first ever win of the season against West Coast, their first win since beating West Coast in round 19 last year. And there were a couple of games that were genuine, interesting coin flips, and we're going to talk about all of them. So, without further ado, how are you doing, Mr. Sarek?
I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. Obviously, in terms of the football, had a very exciting contest in the Showdown. As always, very, very close contest and some minor controversies, which we'll touch on. But in terms of my actual week, yeah, it was pretty chill. I went to another concert. I went with my cousin this time. I think I might have mentioned it last one. I went to see Team Jesus and the Gene Teasers.
Yes, I
They
believe
were
you
doing
mentioned that.
their album Glory, and a few other songs. Because like, yeah, it's always like when they do the short albums, you're like, oh well, I guess I'll play some of the other hits as well, which is good. They were very fun. As I said, I didn't mind Glory like as an album. It was a bit too polished for my liking, but like when they were live, they had a bit more energy to it, and they were very, very fun, very, very polished, very, very clean band. So yeah, not really fun to go see. And yeah, as I said, my cousin and my aunts went to it too, which was pretty funny.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, so as I said, it was sort of a little family affair. Although they went up into the balcony while I went with my cousin a bit closer in because it wasn't a pit, but it was like too
But it was
much
a floor of
for
people.
the old. Yeah, enough of the floor. So yeah, no, it was a good night out.
Yeah, I've got a gig on in 2 weeks. That I want to say is going to be like a floor of people, but it's a little bit of a heavier band, so I think there's going to be a pit, and I don't know if
Mm,
I'm looking forward to that.
bit of a pit. Yeah, it's always the thing where it's like these days I can't really be bothered um, breaking and tearing my limbs more than I need to. Uh, but then I had a really chill day on Sunday. Went to see my granddad at his old home.
I
We
guess.
all had lunch there, which is really nice because it's always good to see him out of the home. And yeah, and then I said, just watch the football too. I'll finish off the weekend. Pretty good, pretty chill.
Yeah, mine wasn't too bad either. Because I'm moving, as you can see, so a lot more stuff is now gone from my background. I'm pretty much nearly done moving out. I've just got like probably one more round of like smaller stuff to move. Like I got to clean out my bathroom. I got to clean out my kitchen. Um, finish cleaning out my bedroom, and then like a couple of smaller things. Like I got to pack away like my consoles and stuff like that as
Mm.
well. So that'll all be done. Preparation to be moved this week, and then everything else will go next week, and then I will be officially into my new place by the 16th, which will hopefully, and I'll hopefully have everything set up in time to record the podcast the following week after. Um, Otherwise, I haven't been busy doing too much else, just working. I did manage to catch a fair bit of the football because I've been doing earlier shifts in my working week. I was able to catch at least the final quarter of the two big games on Friday night, which is very good. So I got to enjoy a bit of football there. I actually didn't get to watch Richmond West Coast because of the early start, sadly. But I did manage to catch the highlights and stuff and catch up on that. What a great win! I will talk about that a bit more.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I caught a little bit of the Sunday games as well. But overall, a very interesting round. But we do have a bit of news to talk about first, and that will be that Gather Round is staying put in South Australia.
Yes, so they have. I think they're on the pages of signing because I was trying to find an article, but I don't think it's been released. But like Twitter has said it, and Twitter's normally right on these things.
Well, if
Or
you're an,
X.
a reporter with integrity, you're usually correct.
Yeah. Or as close as you get with integrity being a reporter.
Yeah, very
Um,
true.
yeah. So yeah, they've signed it for 3 years. It's pretty much expected. I know other like WA's been floated for Gather Round, and while I do think like WA is a very big and important football state, I think just in terms of holidaying and all that, I think it's just a bit harder to convince people to come because it's a lot more traveling. Like Adelaide's already expensive. There was a bit of talk about how expensive it was to book a Showdown trip this year. Obviously, with what's going on in the world, that boosted prices a little bit. But even without that, it's always a bit expensive, especially if you're going to the further out regions like the Barossa and all of that to see the games. But, as I said, Adelaide, they've been very successful with it. It's always been run very efficiently. As I said, you can see if you put your mind to it, at least I think like 80% of the games, there's only like normally one, maybe two games that are legitimately inaccessible.
Yeah.
So you can get a lot of football in. Obviously, if you're a bit more casual, you can go out and see the sights and sound. It's obviously still a fairly dry. I know it wasn't quite this year, but normally it's a fairly dry part of the Adelaide weather. So yeah, as I said, it just makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So had some great football this year.
Yeah, and like I know technically, quote unquote, Victoria is like the central point for the footy, just purely for the fact that like it's on, like you've got the southern states. I say quote unquote southern states being like Perth, Adelaide, and Melbourne, all sitting kind of on the same sort of level, and then you've got Sydney and Brisbane on like the east coast. It all kind of just congregates into Melbourne, minus Tasmania down there. But it does make sense as a standpoint, one, into growing the game more, and two, to just not having everything in Melbourne, to keep gather round in South Australia. I think that works out great. And there isn't, and onto our next topic. Actually, I won't go directly into our next topic, but like all of the cool preseason stuff, all like the big preseason event games that they've started doing now, I think that makes a lot of sense to keep in WA, purely for the fact that it is so difficult to get there, in terms of extra travel time, extra cost, things like that. And then obviously there's opening round, which everyone does not like, but they're going to try and keep it to continue to try and grow the game in New South Wales.
Wow, we're having a official/unofficial gather around next season where it both exists and not exists at the same time, it seems.
It seems like it's just going to be a round one, but not in Victoria, essentially.
Yeah. Not in Victoria, and who knows? Like I said, we'll have to wait until to see what they cook up. But yeah, as I said, So are we going to talk about the other bit of news, the preseason?
Yes. So speaking of South Australia, State of Origin is indeed returning in 2027, and this time WA will be facing off against SA in our brand new preseason clash. There you go.
Yeah, State of Origin in the preseason. I think it's as good a time as any. There was still like a bit of murmurings about, with some of the injuries, with Giants, especially with Hogan not coming up right. There was the other one. Questions on whether it was going to stay. But I think overall, as I said, I think the preseason that they've got now is probably how it's going to remain for the foreseeable future. I think 2 games and then letting clubs sort out if they want to do more or less. Hopefully with the normalization of round 0/round 1, they'll be able to, it'll be less weird where like teams won't have to train and then have a week off. But terms in the game itself, WA versus Adelaide, obviously probably the 2 biggest non-Victorian football states. So it makes sense to have them fight it out. I haven't really looked at the potential lineups, but I mean, it should be close. WA went with Victoria for a fair bit, but Victoria did have the weight of numbers and possessions and all that sort of thing. They definitely were the more dominant team with it. So it's also lining up to soon be announced for pretty much, I guess, the championship battle. As I said, Adelaide versus Victoria the year after that. I'm guessing that's probably going to be in Adelaide. And that should be a good match because, as I said, even though I hope that WA beats Adelaide, if Adelaide do win, I think I'll be cheering extra hard for them to get the win over Victoria. the year later.
I'm sure you will. No, it's a very good matchup. There's a ton, as we know, there are so many talented players that come from both states. We saw last year a ton of those players play, obviously for WA. So it'd be very, very interesting to see what kind of lineups we could be working with for the South Australia team. According to this article, players like Jordan Dawson, Brody Grundy, Jason Horn-Francis, Rankin, Cal Wilkie, Lockie Neal, and Naz as some of the more notable names. Cozzy Pickett will be an interesting one because he did play for WA this year, but he is actually from South Australia. So
technically, I reckon he should play. I reckon he should be able to switch jumpers at halftime.
They should do that. Actually, it'd be really funny. So there's definitely a ton of players that could absolutely have an opportunity to play. We just won't get anything announced for it until either towards the end of the year or early next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too, because especially in that forward line for South Australia, there's already like that synergy. Like you're going to be running Riley Thilthorpe, Darcy Fogarty, maybe Alex Neil-Bullen would be eligible, and even Jack Lukasius. Obviously playing for Port, but it makes a pretty interesting forward lineup. Whether Lukasius is talented enough to make the team.
He's talented enough. He just needs to not be injured.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the thing. It's been a bit up and down, but as I said, I don't know enough about how many prominent forwards could be in the mix either. So we'll wait and see for that. But yeah, it should be a fun one. Again, obviously going to be cheering for WA. I'm not sure if they announced where it is, but I think it's going to be West Australia still.
Yes. Orange will still be in WA, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then they say apparently South Australia versus Victoria in 2028 is in Adelaide Oval, according to Mitch Cleary.
Yes, that is where most of this reporting is coming from at the moment. Nothing super official has come out, but Cleary is usually pretty on the money when it comes to the bigger events like this. So,
yeah, he's like very AFL official connected. They just normally just give him information.
Yeah, pretty much.
That they want out there, getting the buzz out.
Pretty much. All right, let's actually jump into the games of the round. Starting off with our Thursday night clash at the MCG between Collingwood and Hawthorn. And with a draw, the scorelines were 15-3-93 to 13-15-93.
Yes. Both teams only taking 3 numbers in their score lines, and it left us with the first draw of the season. And although Hawthorn weren't quite as accurate, kicking 13-15 with their score, they definitely let Collingwood get away with a 1 this year. I would say this was legitimate and legal highway robbery. As I said, I don't think this game was... I think there was a controversial call before. There was like a Jack Watson?
Nick Watson.
Nick Watson holding the ball or something. Anyway, I was
Jack
only lightly watching
shipping
this game.
right there.
Yeah. But yeah, so but as I said, the real story is just how much the Hawks had free reign to run it into their 50 all night. 50% of their D50 50% was their D50 to forward 50 entry rate. So you were a coin flip, as the title says, to move it from your back half or deep in your back half to your forward half, and they turned half of those into scores. 62 to 34 inside 50s, and yet it was the late Dylan Moore mark and goal. Not mark. It was the fumble from the Darcy Moore mark led to the Dylan Moore high tackle that let Hawthorn share the spoils. Collingwood's backline was honestly great despite the score. Maynard had a great defensive game, I thought. While being a director with ball in hand, he had a lot of influence in the Collingwood's back half is where they chose to move the ball. Frampton was really good, but the one big, I guess, random horror game was Darcy Moore committing more and more crimes to give up that late goal, as I said. Hawthorn kept Collingwood out of the dangerous goal-kicking areas, but their 8 goals from 40 metres plus was more than their shorter shots combined and was the reason they were able to split this contest. Sometimes I think, good kicking is good football is a bit cliche, but Collingwood definitely was able to split the points in a game that they were really not a part of in terms of overall contest.
I don't know. In terms of what I saw out of that final quarter, I think it was Collingwood's to win. I think they genuinely got really lucky with that. No, not really, really unlucky with. I wouldn't say the free kick was there, so I'm not saying that it's like the free kick was a bad thing, but they just really unlucky that it happened when it did, and the following score resulted in the draw, because I think just in terms of like a whole tipping structure, I'm pretty sure most people would have gone with the Hawks. So a lot of people would have been out of tip had the Pies caused the upset. But in terms of just like the way the score kind of fell, like 15 behinds, 28 scoring shots, fantastic, and probably should have put Collingwood away a lot, like much earlier in the game. But the fact that 15 of those were behinds is not a pretty look.
Yeah, you say that, but like in terms of X score, and I said I don't want that to be all and end all. It actually suggested that Collingwood were more freakishly accurate than Hawthorn were. Because again, the expected score, Collingwood scored 31.4 over what they were expected to kick from theirs. They were expected to kick 62 points, essentially. While Hawthorn was expected to kick 98.5, they kicked 93. So basically, Hawthorn were only really a goal behind their tally. It was really just the freakishly good kicking of Collingwood. But again, you got to decide whether you call that luck or just good conversion. As I said, it's sort of hard to judge these things. As I said, you can't really go be all and end all. But I think the major thing was just like how much pressure Collingwood was putting on by converting so well. Obviously, it sort of put the pressure on Hawthorn to, force some of them. But I think early on was like where it really hurt. The 1-7 to start off the game was just, was really before there was like much, sting in the contest. It was just Hawthorn had more opportunities and they weren't getting the return from their dominance, which was pretty apparent.
Yeah, no, like in terms of just like around the ground sort of stuff, Hawks were dominant in majority of areas. Like they had a fantastic game otherwise, and it's like they definitely did deserve the 4 points, purely because of that. But the fact that they didn't is one just again downward testament to the fact that they weren't as accurate as they should have been, but also a testament to Collingwood for actually being able to stay in it the whole way and level with them as much as they did.
Yeah. And I will say too, I think we also got to take a step back and it's like, you can be upset about the 13-15, but you're looking at a forward line that has A, shuffled around a bit, and B, is missing a couple of their bigger players.
Also true.
Which is obviously Mabi Ochol, which is amazing to think about these days. And
Was it Gunston? Did Gunston play this week?
Yeah, I was actually checking. I don't think he did, but
I can't remember.
Yeah,
I can't remember
Gunston wasn't playing.
Oh yeah, it was this week he was out. I couldn't remember which week it was.
Yeah. So, as I said, two really big names, and as I said, there was just a lot to like. Like their back half movement, is absolutely obscene. They're the league leaders in intercept marks, which should come to no surprise. And Impey and Among were amongst the leaders in score involvements in this pretty high number of scoring shot affair for Hawthorn. So, as I said, that drive from the back half was really, really good. As for Collingwood, I said, I think they're one of the weirder sides this season where, like, game per game, they're very inconsistent. But, like, I think the ladder's fairly reflective of where they're at. I think they probably still need a bit of meterage per game. I don't think that they generate enough in terms of just, like, normal supply. They're very low possession, low meterage team. But they do link up great with hands. And obviously we've seen when they get the rebound game flowing, they are really, really damaging. And then it's really up to the forward line cohesion, which depends on whether they get a lot of looks for goals. As I said, they're a bit flimsy in their offensive stoppage work, but they make the difference up with solid pressure. And I think we're still seeing a lot of encouraging signs from their young mids in terms of Long, Anderson, and even the Ruckstein is putting a lot more, well, not a lot more, but a decent amount of pressure on the contest while he shares duties with Darcy Cameron. He seems to be taking a bit of a back seat while he's sort of, he's sort of just been shuffling into the year. I think he picked up an injury early on. I think that was Origin too. He seemed to have
I think he's
split
kind
a
of
lot
been
of
like
contests.
semi-nursing an injury since the preseason.
Yeah.
And he also did pick one up in this game as well, which I will talk about. But Steen has actually done a fantastic job rotating through that ruck position. Ned Long, we've talked about previously, earlier in the season and even last season. He's doing some fantastic work in that midfield. Angus Anderson, a recent draftee brought into the system, has had a fantastic stretch of 4 games. 4
game this one, but still scored a goal, which is
for such a young player, he's having such a huge impact in an inexperienced side, which is what you want to see. I genuinely think Collingwood are in a decent position, but the ladder really does reflect the opponents that they've had to go up against, and just kind of like the inconsistency that has been kind of through their forward line and a little bit in their back line throughout the season.
Yeah, you think they're a tiny bit better than some of the teams around them, but you can't really say that they're a top of the table threat. I think they've, just generally just been a bit short of being a great football team in this league. But as I said, I think that the overall scheme of things is still fairly positive. Even some of the younger players I didn't mention because I was talking more about inside, but like Will Hayes, Will Parker, Rowan Steele, all contributing a bit. So when players like Sidebottom and eventually Scott Pendlebury retire, if he ever does,
there's theories he could go for one more round.
Yeah, well, the thing is, he's got to survive until like some sort of cryogenic body preservation thing gets invented, and he can play until he's 102. We're yet to see that happen, but it might. But yeah, so it's pretty much it for this game. As I said, it was very close contest. Hawthorn should have won, but I'm not really thinking that they're any worse off for losing this. Collingwood at their best seem to be a bit above the page. I think they're the highest. I think they're actually the team the highest above their X score this year too, because I was looking that for the opposite way for another team.
Oh,
yeah. Or at least in the top. And I was a bit surprised to see that because I just remember the Fremantle game when they couldn't kick a goal to save their life. So overall, they seem to be a bit more accurate than they are lethal, but at the same time, that's gotten them enough wins this season and are looking solid.
Yeah, I believe their run to mid-season isn't too bad either, so there's a fair chance to pick up another couple of wins before the mid-season bye, which would be good for them. And as for Hawthorn, I don't think they'll take too much away from this game. Maybe just a little bit of extra work for their forward line, just in terms of conversion. But I guess it's a lot of forward lines are like that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they're sitting great. Like their entire system is working out extremely well. Their backline is still fantastic, and is doing so much of that heavy lifting. Honestly, in terms of their movement, in terms of preventing teams from getting on a run, they're really good at shutting that sort of stuff down. I think
down on the outside.
Yeah, and then I think going into the mid-season, they've got I don't think their run towards the mid-season is too bad either. So they should likely pick up another couple wins too.
Yeah. Also, I didn't say it, but I should have said it when I was talking about their forward line. But Connor McDonald, how much has he sort of lifted in that threat? Because we've seen Moore have some up and down games. I don't think he's had the impact that he quite had 2 years ago. But then someone like Connor McDonald, he can go in the inside midfield. He can link up, and his ball use has gone up heaps he is a much more threatening link-up target. When I think when he started off, he was a bit of a ball burner. He would be the sort of one to overkick his inside 50 entries, and 3 goals in this game. Fair few. I think he had a few goal assists. Yeah, he had one. And yeah, as I said, he was pretty fantastic.
And that's what we love to see. On the injury side of things, however, there are a couple, most of them from Collingwood side of things. Harry Perriman going out with a hamstring, Darcy Cameron with an ankle, Steele Sidebottom with a hand injury, and James Sicily also with an ankle after just coming back from suspension. So it's been a fun couple of weeks for him.
Yeah, nice. It's just sort of always been a bit inconsistent sometimes. Hasn't been suspended as much, but injuries has sort of kept James Sicily in and out of the side. Yeah, as I said, they've almost sort of played him as a utility player because of it. Because, as I said, he doesn't really lead command that core back line, and he doesn't need to. Like, it's no fault of his. So he just either plays like the loose intercept or goes forward.
Yeah, well, we've seen that he can be a bit of a swingman, which is extremely helpful when your backline is now one of the most stacked backlines in the league.
Yeah, exactly. And, so we said that they don't quite have the forward depth, so they can just sort of play him whenever they want. I mean, technically, they can even play Scrimshaw up forward if they so choose. He's been, again, like he had a pretty big game it was either last week or a couple of weeks, but this one, as I said, they seem to find him a bit awkward to play when there's no real tolls to defend because, as I said, it's like Dan Buller, Jack McStay, Jack Buller, Daniel McStay. It's not really that much you have to extend with, so he played a very awkward role, low possession.
Sometimes
it's always a bit funny.
Sometimes that's just how it is.
It's a very big luxury when you've got Hawthorn that are like literally not playing their tolls and like Bulldogs just praying
for
to make any of their tolls work. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about them soon. In fact, now.
Yes.
We'll sort of make that the lead up into the next game.
That is indeed correct.
But,
yeah,
they didn't do too bad. They didn't do too bad, some of them.
They didn't. So we're going over to Marvel Stadium for our first Friday night game with Bulldogs and Freo. And with a 12-point margin, Freo did win out 17-12, 114 to 15-12, 102. Only 2 goals separated these two teams in the final quarter. It was very back and forth. And honestly, I genuinely had forgotten that Tim English was back in, and you can see how much of a difference he makes just being in the side.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because, as I said, I was talking about it in the thing. It's like, they technically got an inch back with some of their ends this week. They still lost a couple of players, but they took the whole mile to the Dockers at Marvel, especially in the first half where Freo were just having a defensive nightmare against the returning Norton and co. The Dogs will be very happy to keep the 4 Freo tolls to 3 goals, all of them coming from Tracy. And as I mentioned, Buslinger is sort of making some impact in the league. He got Voss scoreless, which I think is very impressive because Voss, even in his worst, has normally kicked a couple of behinds. He hasn't quite gotten going this season, but he just didn't get anything. But it would be Freo's dominance from stoppage and turnover, leading to a high-scoring affair where both teams could move the ball at a decent clip. I actually thought English, again, I was sort of looking at the stats. Like, I think it was a good return in essence, but I definitely think, like, Luke Jackson and Mason Cox had an absolutely terrific game.
Oh, yeah,
I think
absolutely.
Mason Cox was more because he was facing against Louis Emmett, which I did read lead him to the highest percentage of hit-out wins for having over 20 contests, which I think was at 85% or something like that. Hit-outs win. I think he had the same amount of hit-outs to advantage as Tim English as well, maybe a bit more.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's a very good effort. As I said, Emmett, I think, is a bit spent at this stage. I think he's, done a very brave job to obviously come in early, take a solo ruck when they had no one. But I think he'll be slowly phased out of the side when they can. And yeah, as I said, just to finish it all up, I think you got to give the Dockers the midfield the win because Young and Bolton combined for some absolutely freakish plays late. Like, they sealed the deal in a game that didn't exactly deserve to be so early dominated by Freo late in that third quarter. Because the fourth quarter, I should say, because like, you know, it was really just great conversion. Again, sort of like Collingwood. Whereas I said for those 4 goals, it really feels like only a couple of them like were really easy shots. And the Bulldogs, as I said, were defending well, forcing them into tougher positions. In fact, Bulldogs had a lot more easy shots than the Dockers did. But, as I said, just by converting those goals, late in the third, early in the fourth, I sort of just put them out of arm's reach, which was a shame because they dominated the whole night. They were really good. Their effort was clearly there. Like, they had a solid intent to win. And, as they doing this, while still half getting your team back, after getting belted, looking fairly miserably, I think it was a really solid effort.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the Dogs put their best foot forward this week and actually showed up to be the team that we had seen prior to all the big injuries. So we know that obviously they're still missing Sam Darcy. He'll be out for quite a while. So they won't get their entire forward line back for a while, but they did get Arty Jones back, who had fantastic impact in this game. But yeah, I think Tim English is still kind of that big defining factor of like, one, he's a tall who can play all around the ground, but two, he makes such a difference in that ruck contest because he has that experience and that veterancy to be able to play against a lot of the other bigger ruckmen as well, and just make a more positive impact for that midfield. Obviously, they're still missing Libba. They do have Trelaw still in, and he has had some good impact, thankfully. The Bont, who's still kind of playing on one leg, is doing some fantastic work as he always does. Kennedy's look great. I think Kennedy's had a really solid month, though the games haven't been that great in terms of like final score. But yeah, no, I think the Dogs are finally back on track. It'll just take a little bit of time before they're 100% again.
Yeah, I'll say the word like that I used was stabilizing. As I said, I really think that this the difference between this game and the other games was sort of a better show in the outside contest that I was showing earlier in the season. Obviously, they lost that the last 2 games, which caused more intercept generation because, as I said, when you protect your defense a bit more, the Dogs have shown that they're able to, I know it's hard because they gave up a lot of score, but you know what I mean? Like, they really did, try their best. And, like, honestly, if you're just going off this match, I would have actually taken the Bulldogs back 6 over the Freo's back 6 because they were disorganized. A lot of high contact free kicks. Arguable if some of them were worth it, but they were very clumsy in front of goal.
Mm-hmm.
They let Bulldogs get a lot of easy shots for goals. They gave up a lot of shots inside 30 meters. And, as I said, normally it's one of their strengths, but their tolls were just off. On the ground, they played all right. I think Chapman is having a probably near career year so far. He's been very good. And they're still missing Braden Walker, but someone like Carl Warner is doing a very good job in his absence. Wagner also plays all right when he's playing off halfback. Sometimes he goes up to the wing. So yeah, but as I said, Pierce just looked I think this was probably one of those games where Ryan intercepted well. But when he wasn't getting hands to the contest, it felt like they were losing it.
Yeah.
So I think, it was arguable to think that what their total effort was leading to good defense. Because, as I said, I'm not saying that this padded Luke Ryan's stats. I'm just saying that I don't think they played the tolls in the best position to kill contests because I think it was just a bit too easy sometimes for the Bulldogs. I think with a bit tighter defense, the Bulldogs would have, been a bit quieter, especially early on, given Freo a bit more chance early. But yeah, as I said, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit hard to say because it's like, yeah, I almost feel like Freo got bailed out by talent, but at the same time, it's like, because they've been winning so much, because they've looked so solid otherwise, yeah, it's sort of given them a bit of a pass for this. But yeah, as I said, I definitely think Longmuir has some things to think about in terms of calibrating that defense. As I said, I can't remember which team we were talking about, but it's one of those things where, it was Geelong the week before.
Yes.
Where, really good teams, they have these things. Maybe they get away with the game, that maybe they don't. But they need to tinker with a bit. So when it comes to later in the season, they don't get exposed when a team sort of pulls something on you when they notice those tiny flaws in the regular season.
Yeah, I think just in terms of this case, I think because the Dogs were playing a lot smaller of a forward line this week, it did kind of throw Freo for a bit of a loop. Just in terms of just the way Freo are also structured, and they're a little bit more taller in their defense.
Yeah.
Whereas, you're also right in the fact that there was very, very weird inconsistencies in this game, like just in terms of their performance in defense. And yeah, that's definitely something that Longmuir will look at, especially because I think they've got a kind of difficult run in the next couple of weeks on the way to mid-season.
I can look. Yeah.
Whereas I think the Dogs are also in a similar boat, but I think they're, again, because of the fact that they're still getting injuries back, again, their back line is still missing two of their key defenders. So there's still very much a mismatch of, assorted matchups down there, not to mention the fair chance the Bod could be out for an actual management rest this week, unless he's, willing to keep playing on one leg until it snaps at this point. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, there is definitely a lot of takeaways for both sides on this game.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's just like one of those things where, it's been brave by Bontempelli, but yeah, the bye can't come sooner enough for him because, as I said, yeah, like, in terms of, like, I know his output's technically, as I said, technically down considering some of his other years, like, to say technically down for what he's done, like, 2 goals, 32 possessions, it's pretty silly, but technically,
his average,
you know what I mean?
His averages are below last year's, but they're not, like, egregiously down.
But, like, again, considering he's had an injury-affected year, it's like, dang. Like, his injury-affected year is probably, like, above the average AFL player, which is absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, and as I said, it is still nice to see a few players coming around, because, again, I want to just say, like, Buslinger, Selwood, absolutely fantastic. I think this was even a game where the other one didn't play. I think he was rested this week. Yeah, Nick Caulfield, that's right. He came in after a long while because Jacques took a rest. Or was omitted, I can't remember.
Yes.
And you know what? Like, as much as Tracy got 3 goals 3, he was on. And he is so hard to stop letting, he is so hard to stop taking opposition marks against.
He has become one of the game's most lethal full forwards, which is like in some cases it's kind of tough to kind of quantify because you have so many other tall forwards who do such amazing work. Like, you've got Kerno who's putting on an absolute clinic in Sydney. You've got I guess Jake Waterman, you could probably throw in there for a bit, even though, West Coast West Coast, like, he does some fantastic work when he's able to get ball in hand.
Big Benjamin.
Yes, Ben King. You can also throw in, I guess, Aaron Norton and Sam Darcy both into that because they both do fantastic work, even though Darcy's obviously still out. There's a ton of, like, insane tall forwards in the competition, and Tracy's definitely like up there at the moment.
He's definitely like that old school hands dominance. So, like, he goes into a pack and you're just expecting him to win, no matter what body's sort of in front of it.
He's got he has such a huge amount of confidence when it comes to packs. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But again, I only saw like the first half of it. But some of the second effort I saw about Nick Caulfield were pretty good, and he actually finished up the game with 10 marks himself. So you know what I mean. At least he was involved in a bit of link up as well. So again, the Bulldogs back half looks a lot better, which is good because we didn't really want to see like a few injuries and all the structure falls apart. As I said, there are signs that this is just like overall improvement, despite obviously this loss run heading on to a few games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. On the injury side of things, Latham Vandermeer went out with a right hamstring concern. Again, he's been in and out of the side for multiple years now at this point with injuries.
Yeah,
But
it's a shame he just came back too.
yeah, but like when he's on, like he is actually so good. It's just really unfortunate that he's so injury prone.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, just Vandermeer and Waitman, really polish off that forward line.
Though
And
it
there's
is good to see that Cody Waitman does have a bit of a more clearer timeline on his return to AFL, which at the
I think they
moment
said
is about 6 weeks.
3 to 4.
I think. After
okay.
this week, it might be shorter. But last I read, it was
Yeah.
about 6 weeks. So he should hopefully at least be playing VFL by the mid-season. And then
Yeah.
whether they bring
Probably
him
post
in,
by.
yeah, it'll be
Is
sometime
time
post
frame.
by is when he may come back to the AFL. Slight tangent, because it's not related to either team. But Max King had made his return into the VFL, and has immediately gotten injured yet again. So that's fun.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just cannot catch a break in that one either.
Yeah, no, I said it's pretty putrid news, but yeah, as I said, sometimes like you want to work your players into the VFL, give them a bit of thing, but you can still get injured in the lower leagues, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, especially when you're that tall and like haven't exactly played a consistent game in like at this point almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought you were talking about Vandermeer being
oh,
tall. Yeah, Max King
yeah.
is very tall, obviously.
And then on the MRO side of things, Matthew Johnson was fined twice for two incidents against the same player. He was fined $1,000 for misconduct. I think it was just like a really dirty tackle or something like that. I can't remember. And $1,000 for striking both of these on Will Lewis.
Yeah, I think it was just like I don't know. It was like a sort of a up in the face sort of thing. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't think I actually saw it, so I can't comment it, but it was very much a just a bit of a jostle after a contest. We've seen a bit of that. There's one that we'll talk about very later on that was very interesting, but
Yes.
he won't be the only player that will be double booked for the same offense. So yeah, can't claim double jeopardy in the AFL.
Correct.
Actually, no, you maybe can. I don't know.
You might be
Technically,
able to.
double jeopardy is innocence. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, maybe what I said was barristically wrong, but I don't care.
My hands are off.
Showdown.
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 Yes. Our second match of the Friday night games. It was the Showdown. Showdown 59, I believe, to be technically correct. Between the Crows and Port Adelaide, of course, and with a 1 point margin, with an absolute incredible final quarter. The Crows did win
Yeah.
out 11-10-76 to 11-9-75.
Honestly, it was. I've never felt so okay with such a close showdown loss. Like, because there have been a few. There've always been the Jordan Dawson kick after the siren that absolutely shattered me. There was what was the other late one? I think there was another one that Adelaide got one very late. I can't remember who, but yeah, there was a couple. Obviously, Port getting their own a few times. There was the one with Stephen Motlop. There was the one with obviously Angus Monfries near 10 years ago now, probably a bit more. But, as of this game, it really felt like two teams that were really wanting to win. They felt like their recent win-loss record weren't reflective of where they were. And that led to a real arm wrestle. That almost had Adelaide get another controversial loss. But thanks to some, I was about to say Sam Berry. It's the other one, wasn't it? Gotta look it up.
It is the other one, but
The other winger. Who is it? Brandon Cook, Magic,
yes.
absolutely slotting. I don't know if you saw the goal, but it was absolutely
No,
beautiful. Yeah, as I said, he just slotted one boundary line on the run. I think it might have been outside 50 or very much just in for a goal. So yeah, as I said, obviously the controversy I was talking about, again, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but Adelaide had probably the first goal line interference call in this match. Wayne Miller, Roos one from outside 50, goes right through the hey diddle middle. But I think it was Saligo got called for pushing, and I'll say pushing lightly because it was very light. Someone on the goal line, which got overturned, which again, it hasn't been called all year. Of all the pushes, like this wasn't even like an extended one. This was like a hands already extended and like sort of resting.
Yeah. Like those pushes like that happen in the game all of the time. So the fact that it was kind of this one was kind of called out is a little weird.
It was strange. And I'd just like to say this part, like, because I'm a little on a tangent, and you know, it said, I do want to see more of them called. I don't think even with the stricter interpretation, I would have called that. The ones that I want to be called is when the players are not looking at the ball. So like a marking contest. As soon as if you don't have any eyes on the ball, you're not allowed to make marking interference. So your holding and your pushes are called more harshly. And sort of like pushing the back at a marking contest. The two-tone action where you can sort of just have your arm out if you're going back and you sort of just like having it out, feeling out your players.
Also,
you can have
trying
it
to keep
resting.
your space is what it's what.
Yeah, you can have it resting, pushing up the body, but you can't push out.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as you do that, I like those ones to be called. The rest, I can sort of take it or leave it. Adelaide also had a controversial arc decision taken back, which was very funny. Well, funny because they won as well, so they can sort of laugh about it now. But back to the game. This was a scrap. It was a good scrap. Port had a lot of deep intercept possessions. Elliot, Levens, and Lai were doing very great, but not getting past halfway because Adelaide sort of had this forward half press going. But when Port could get the rebound, they converted a lot better. In fact, they had 17% better conversion inside 50. It was keeping Port in the game. As I said, as well as having the better clutch umpire moments. We talked about them. They were a bit weird. The Crows probably would have won this third quarter and gone on to win the game quite comfortably in a normal game. I think they were overall the better team, but they did lose Walker and Butts. And just due to the immense pressure of the game, I think it did cause their defensive efforts to loosen up. And the kids' football, this is where it really got nice. It was Berry and Whitlock who almost won it off their own boot. You know, I sort of talk these points over older, but like, you know, the goal line block by Cook. Sorry, the goal line block led to the Cook roosting his match winner. So, as I said, is sort of a bit of justice in the end. But I think overall, it was just Adelaide having huge conversion from their toughest shots. I know that 11-10, 11-9, you know, just looks pretty middle of the road. But Adelaide had to convert some pretty tough entries because, as I said, Port really weren't letting them have anything. Like, the difference from Port's defense from round 0 to 3 or whatever it was to now is night and day. Yeah, they don't win as many one-on-one contests, but they make sure that the ones they do concede are very out or wide. They don't give up too many straightforward shots on goal, and they're pretty good on ground level, which is a big difference.
I think the fact that your backline is now stabilized a lot more with, you know, Lear kind of leading the way, but then you have Frankie Evans and you have Josh Lai down there as well, but providing a lot more stability with more consistency in their game time.
Yeah,
I think it makes so much of the difference, especially when you don't have Radicalia down there, whilst he's still out, you know. And you have...
I think Jones as well is a really big improvement.
I agree.
Because he is still like a big human meat stick. in the sense that he's like a contest structure. He's not always clean. But I think there's probably like a bit of a car improvement because I think this is an overall Port improvement, but he doesn't get sucked in as much. I've noticed that a lot where Port don't give up as many chain handballs. They're very good at protecting. They're pretty good at balancing, putting pressure on the ball carrier, but not giving up the forward space, which is absolutely huge. That's why it's so much harder to move the ball against them now, as in comparison to last year. But as I said, it's really good to see some of their strengths coming through because, as I said, this was a stabilizing win for Adelaide. Like, I could say that their ball movement wasn't terrific, but, as I said, at least set up their forward half play, and Port are really good at shutting down outside movement. Sam Berry, effort of the lifetime, won the Showdown medal, absolutely deserved. Really put the pressure on because their midfield were, I think, a bit sloppy. As I said, I think the other real midfield player was sort of McAndrews, because, he was getting beaten in the ruck. Jordan Sweet had an absolutely fantastic game. He's starting to put on a career year. But I thought McAndrews' ground level pressure was actually really good. There was a few times where Port seemingly got the clearance, but, they at least, whereas, like, even if it's not a tackle, putting the hand out, causing either a bit of sideway movement or a bit of perceived pressure, forced, the entries inside. And it was really good. And as I said, on the flip side, Port, except for Marshall looking a bit underdone, were very good. As I said, the other thing that I think's changed, and I'll say it, is the unforced back half turnovers. They just don't quite commit them as much anymore, and they're now turning into a very good back half movement team. It's opened up their offense a lot, especially Mitch Georgiadis, who, unlike other defenders, probably likes a bit of time and space going into the forward line because he's a very good timer of his leads and he isn't afraid to go wide. He's got a very good conversion wide. As is always the case with Mitch Georgiadis, he misses the one straight in shot, straight in front, but he does a really good converting from the boundary, which is, great for that conversion because, it always means that there's a lead going on in Port's forward half. And he continues his goals per match streak, which is the longest in the AFL, which I think is up to 20 this week.
Very nice. Yeah, he has, speaking of like, prominent full forwards, he's also one of those prominent full forwards. He's definitely up in that conversation. He's such a difference maker for Port Adelaide. And like, you want to hope that, I know there's been a little bit of talk of him maybe going to another club in the next 2 years.
Back to WA, yeah.
Yes, he is a WA boy. But if Port can keep him, like, he will be such a huge difference to Carr's future in leading this club.
Yeah, I don't know if this is being ridiculous because I do think Zach Butters is like so much better than like your average midfielder. I really rate him. Even though I say like you always go for a midfielder over. You always go for key position forward over a midfielder. I think Zach Butters is for like most teams what you would probably go for. However, I don't think our forward line can function without Georgiadis. I would rather keep Georgie over Butters, which is insane, and I'd rather keep both. To be honest,
it is like, kind of insane when you put it like that. But the reality of it is like you don't exactly have any other up and coming key position players to fill the Georgiadis role if he goes. Whereas for Butters, it's a lot easier to find like midfielders.
Yeah, we're still unsure about Lukosius and, Whitlock's looking really good. I think his development's sort of a bit fast track, but, he's still a young kid. You don't want to put that much pressure on him.
He's currently getting a lot faster of a development than his brother over at Carlton. Over at North.
North. So... Yeah. No, I get you. But, so as I said, that will be a huge thing. But, as I said, Port's forward line too is improving. I think, I've really gained a lot of respect for Corey Durden, which is a sentence I've never thought I would say. He used to be the sort of player that I sort of joked about with my mate, Carlton supporter, Robbo. And, not like putting him down, but like, when the tolls got down, it was like, well, they'll just have to rely on Corey Durden kicking a bag this week. They'll be fine sort of thing. And, he comes to Port, a bit better system. And, he's making the most of it. He's finding the ball. He's, just as good as distribution as he is to kicking in himself, and he's been a really nice compliment. Adds a bit more goal kicking threat because while Richards is good, I think their combination sort of adds up to be positive in the goal kicking department,
Yeah.
and allows Joe Berry just to pop up here and there, which is sort of the sort of play he is, because he had a fantastic last quarter, but otherwise was pretty negligible in the match.
Yeah, I think because of the fact that like Port's forward line is like somewhat like mismatched at the moment. I think that does allow
Yeah.
a player like Corey Durden to have a little bit more of a flexibility kind of role in terms of what he can do in that forward line. And the fact that he is able to be a high converter alongside Georgiadis does make those sorts of bigger impacts, especially when a player like Lukosius is, hot and cold with injury. When you still have Whitlock developing, Richards still very much developing as well. And,
Yeah, Darcy Byrne-Jones, when he was in the forward line, like, he was good, but he wasn't exactly efficient. He was very pressure-based as a forward.
and it also means that you don't have to rely a huge amount on your midfield trying to push up and convert for you as well. Like we've seen Horne-Francis be able to do that, and he's fantastic at being able to do that. But he's so much better in just getting the ball in the guts and passing it along and keeping that movement flowing rather than having to worry about trying to convert. And I think it's still where Port are very much still missing Rosie the most, is that they just have that extra set of hands to be able to help with that link up and like movement, especially if he's playing a little bit further back. Like they're definitely missing him still just as much. But like the fact that beyond that, like Butters, Horne-Francis, like they're doing so much.
Wines, I thought, actually
Ollie
had
Wines,
his best link-up game.
yeah, he actually had a
in long
fantastic game
time.
here, from what I saw, which is very good
Yeah.
considering how old he is and like how much like the system is starting to like not work entirely in his favor, but he's still able to provide a lot when he's really switched on.
Yeah, and as I said, I do want to give a bit of a shout out to some Adelaide players, because again, don't want to talk too much about Port just because they're my
we probably
team.
should do that.
Wayne Miller again was absolutely fantastic. I think he's one of the players that, even though Adelaide's back movement's gone down, I think his ball use from the back half has been absolutely fantastic. Alex Neil-Bullen came up in moments, especially coming back. Thought he was really good. And was one of the defenders that was all right. I can't quite remember. I think it was just Josh Worrell, because he was roaming around a bit more. He had a pretty good defensive impact. He just killed a few contests that looked like Port were going to get something out of Wood. And, when it's a 1 point margin, those plays matters. And Toby Murray. That's the one. The young ruckman coming in, first game in a while. Obviously wasn't really looking to support McAndrews. He only had 3 hitouts for the matches. I don't think many ruck contests, but was able to provide some height around the ground. And his impact was a lot more early. He only had 68% of game time anyway, but 2 goals, an absolutely fantastic effort. As I said, he I think he was the one that came in for, or sort of playing instead of Fogarty.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not even sure if Fogarty would have taken 2 goals that match. He hasn't exactly been in red hot form. So the fact that they were able to get that out of him, again, in a tight margin game, is the difference between winning and losing when you're put to the wire sometimes. So shouts to him.
Yes. Like I think there are a lot of Adelaide players that very much. Well, both teams very much tend to get up for the Showdown. It's one of the biggest rivalries of the competition, and it's always a joy to watch. But yeah, like it's the fact
really many bad performers anyway.
No,
like Hugh Bond had a nightmare game, and then it was just Taylor getting injured early.
Yes, and that is exactly what I'm going to mention now. A big Texan is out with a hamstring injury, and Jordan Butts as well with a groin complaint. Hopefully, it won't rule them both out for too long, considering this is likely Texas last year. So I assume he does not want to miss out on too many games if he can avoid it.
Yeah. Well, I think they're soft, cold weeks for him. That was sort of the news that was coming out. It was it said hamstring awareness, but they, iced him out, and it's sort of the news from the ground. But it
Considering
was
his
sort of like
age, it is probably a fair chance he won't
yeah,
get played next week anyway. Just to be on the precautionary side of things. But that should be all right.
yeah. Well, they should have an away game because they have the home showdown.
Yes,
So
that is right.
yeah, it's unlikely to travel.
All right, let's jump over now to our first Saturday game of the round, where we're going over to Marvel Stadium where the Bombers hosted the Lions. And everyone kind of expected
Yeah.
this one to go this way, and it very much did. But the 64-point margin, the Lions, the reigning premiers, they did win out 22-11, 143 to 11-13, 79. It's like there were some very minor positives to come out of this game for the Bombers, but otherwise it was just an absolute premiership rollover.
Yeah, because you didn't watch this game, I'm assuming, and
No,
I didn't watch this game.
I did not. What was I doing? When I finished work, I had to clean the apartment for an open for inspection because again I'm moving out, so the agents want to get people moving in. So I had to be around for that. Then I caught up with some friends, so I just did not look at this game at all. So I've missed pretty much all of it. I did kind of keep an eye on the score, and I did notice that there were in terms of stats and stuff, there were definitely a few players that are worth highlighting. But otherwise, it was just Brisbane all the way. Like they're elite for a reason,
was like
and I know it was the Bombers,
periods,
but
yeah. I think there was like periods where it sort of stabilized. Like the first half wasn't like 4-8 to 10-5. It's like, well, they're not going to win in scoring shot department. So 4-8 probably just puts it out of the context. Then the next quarter they only score one goal. So it was really only the defense which let them down. And it's even harsh calling it defense because it was very non-existent. 163 marks was the Lions' marking total. Their movement was absolutely free. I don't think I mentioned some of the movement stats, but they were all very positive. Change to score 30%. D50 to forward 50 was 35, 5% more when you're talking about defensive half to forward 50. So, not worst of the round. Like, Hawthorn obviously got a bit more. But, as I said, it was pretty easy. And scores per inside 50 going above 50%. So, as a very healthy stats, pretty much around the board, stat wins, as I said, Dons had more handballs and handball meters gained, which, might count as a win, I guess. But yeah, apart from that, it was just like a massive outscoring. It was a massive victory on the outside. So many players had really big games. Darcy Wilmot, Zach Bailey, he'd probably put his contract up a bit.
Yeah.
Froggy Lester, geez, is having a good year again. Langford, pretty much did bits and pieces here and there from the stats, but not really had much of an impact. But Ryan Lester was able to get involved. And yeah, as I said, it's pretty much, again, Kitty Coleman, Harris Andrews, Kitty Coleman and Kai Lohman, both having really good games, constantly improving, coming back into this side. And as I said, there really is only a few injuries for them. I think the best thing for the Dons was Nick Cox getting a goal in his first game back, sort of playing as a makeshift forward.
It's good to see Nick Cox back inside because they have missed what he is able to bring. Granted, they're missing a lot still at the moment, but he's one of those few players that has such a strong impact when he's in and when he's fit.
Yeah. And I would also say Wright and Caddy, I think, were the two Bombers to have a better than average day. Peter Reich in the ruck has sort of improved his game a lot. He almost reminds me of Riley Thilthorpe, where sometimes he seems a bit more dangerous when he's also taking ruck duties, just because it gets him a bit more involved in the game. I don't know if he's got the body to play that out for the years, but I hope Essendon take a bit of note of that. But that's about the only positive you could say from the centre bounces, because 45 points from centre bounces was probably one of the bigger worries for the Don. And unfortunately, the Caldwell injury is probably no excuse for the lackluster shape, because, as I said, their pressure, which used to be one of the more identifying features, has sort of dropped in the middle. They just can't find the balance of defensive play versus offensive play in that midfield, and it's a problem coming from the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's been an issue that's been plaguing them for a while now, and ankle injury to Caldwell and a collarbone injury to El Houli definitely does not help their case in terms of movement, especially now movement from their back half is going to suffer a bit. But it is good to see that Peter Wright has actually had such a strong impact in the ruck for what he's able to offer. I assume when they bring Nick Bryan in, once he's eventually recovered, they'll probably rotate the two more efficiently, depending on how the new ruck rules kind of work for Bryan. That's how I imagine it would probably end up going. He would likely be the one to take the number one ruck role back for that moment, just to free out Wright, again, to be able to do stuff around the ground instead. But yeah, losing, but Caddy doing some good stuff when ball is in a forward 50 is good. He is shaping to be a really, really good tall forward, even though he's still so young and still so much to learn in terms of forward craft. But yeah, just around the ground, it's just so hard to kind of quantify all of the issues that Essendon have, because they're just the same sort of issues that we've been talking about for the entire time we've been doing this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Just a little update on Nick Bryan, because he has played 3 rounds of VFL and is averaging about just over 20 hitouts, which is a bit low for him, but I can't exactly see their time on ground, so he might be playing reduced minutes as he gets back into it, and is getting about 13 to 14 disposals, so definitely working towards getting back in.
That's good.
Yes,
I'm
as said, is
I'm very glad that they're
probably still needed
yeah.
at this moment. I don't think Lockie Blackiston, can provide enough from what we've seen, whether it was when he was solo ruck or whether it's in defense, because as said, he just has he hasn't liked being played so around the ground.
Yeah, I think he's one of those
defensive
players who prefers to stay in one sort of key role, which would be down in
Yeah.
defense at this point. So hopefully once Brian's back in, I do really appreciate that they're taking a more conservative approach in terms of his fitness and just getting that workload back into him in time. So it could still be at least another 2 weeks or so until we actually see him on the AFL field, which is fine, honestly. Again, it's Essendon. They're probably going to end up losing more games regardless. Let's be honest here. But if you can ensure that he is 100% fit, is able to play out games, and doesn't have to worry too much about taking Peter Wright out of the forward line if he's going to rotate ruck with him or with Blackiston or with whoever, then that puts Essendon in a better position if he's able to play out games.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that's about it, really. I think, just the small other things like, Kadagianis getting a few more games into him. Yeah, as said, Dyson Sharp as well. He's not looking too bad, but yeah, as I said, it's not really too much to talk about. As I said, I think the only positive there was just scoring enough. And even though it's not technically as good a conversion as they normally are, but yeah.
I mean, 24 scoring shots to 33 isn't outrageous, realistically.
Yeah, and I don't even think they were smacked in the inside 50 count. I mean, it was Brisbane got too many inside 50s with 65, but 53 is still a healthy amount to work with. So, considering how much they were spanked off the ball, it's a little win. But yeah, as I said, I think the core of the midfield being a concern was the biggest bad side, but everything else is just what you sort of expect from an Essendon versus Brisbane. match.
Yeah, pretty much. And then just on one final bit of news, Ty Gallop did sadly end the game with concussion, so he will not be playing this week. Honestly, though, what a revelation it has been for him to be in the back line whilst they have their injuries. Because according to his profile, he played a lot of defense when he was coming up in the state leagues before getting drafted.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of like a full circle moment for him. I think I might have talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but like the fact that he's able to like fill in like the kind of the positions down there that have sadly been opened up due to injury is really really solid, especially when like that Brisbane's forward line at the moment is like on fire.
Yeah, exactly. You know, as I said, we've said for years, like Brisbane's defense only has to be average, and oftentimes they play above averagely. I'm still a bit up in the air what I'll call them this year. But yeah, like something like that. From Ty Gallop, you know, as I said, technically on one-on-one contests, you know, he's a bit but you know, as I said, it's just all the small things. You know, he does a lot of defensive acts, gets a few pressure tackles in per game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just a sort of bit of everything, and that's sort of all they need. So yeah, it's also not too bad with ball in hand. It's not bad field kick as well for a tall defender.
I think because also the fact that like he came into this side last season and kind of just ended up stumbling into a premiership, kind of gives him that hunger to like really kind of prove himself that premiership like he had earned. Like it's a lot of players are like that. Like
Yeah,
you look at, let's say I'm going to use Jack Graham just for an example. 2017, he plays
yeah.
like his fifth game was literally the 2017 grand final. And like some of those players, when you play a short amount of games, sometimes it doesn't feel like you've earned it. Like you kind of just happen to be right place, right time kind of thing. Jacob Townsend, kind of a very similar story in that case. So when you find an opportunity to play a little bit more consistent game time in a premiership side, it kind of quantifies like the reality of earning that premiership and now proving to the rest of the AFL world, or even if it's just yourself, that you can earn like a second one and that sort of stuff. Like these younger players will definitely have that sort of mindset.
Yeah, but you know, as I said, it might be the case for Brisbane where they might be getting another premiership Ty Gallop's way, regardless. So,
I mean,
as I said, he can
we're
almost prove himself in both ways.
only 8/9 rounds in. So you know it's still somewhat early to call, but Brisbane are back in the top 4.
Oh, I'm not calling the premiership, but I'm just saying is that you'd be silly
it's-
not to think that Brisbane would be at least a prelim threat at this point.
100%. Well, they're back in the top
Take a
4
lot to
now.
go wrong.
And they've got a
Yeah.
decent run towards before mid-season. Then obviously, you know, the games do get a little harder post-bye. But you know, they've definitely primed themselves to be in a fantastic position at the moment. All right, jumping over now to our second Saturday game, where we go over to Perth, where the West Coast Eagles host Richmond, and with an 11-point margin, my boys finally got their first win of the season, 15-9-99 to 13-10-88.
Yes, and I think it might be controversial to say 3 teams making up the Spoon Bowl because that means that Carlton isn't a Spoon Bowl team, which might be controversial, but I don't think they are. I don't know. We'll find out later in the year.
It's hard to kind of call with Carlton just because the first halves look great, the second halves don't look great. So yeah, I don't really know where to put them right now.
Yeah, but West Coast didn't let Richmond confirm a number 1 draft pick that easily by obviously letting them win. I don't think you said the score yet, have you?
I did. I said the score.
Oh, okay, cool. I wasn't listening. Yeah, but it was a fun Spoon Bowl. I don't actually think it was like as riddled as some of them tend to be. It was pretty defenseless at times, especially for the Eagles, who I think gave too many what I'll call free clearances, which is where you're being a bit too attacking, and Richmond were just able to take it center bounce uncontested, and coughed up a lot of easy defensive marks. Noah Bolter in the ruck, geez, he gave Williams an absolute bath.
One thing I want to mention in regards to that is that we pointed out last week, or whenever we played Melbourne, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, Like the matchup against Max Gorn works really well because they're very similar builds, but
Yeah.
it's the ruck rules that I think are favoring Bolter a lot more because he has the leap to play
Mm.
the kind of jumping style of ruck that the AFL wants to see.
Yeah, and look, as I said, I can't confirm it, but like Noah Bolter, 4 free kicks, 4 for 1 against, and BJ Williams 1 against to oh sorry, 1 4 for 4 against. You know, he was able to bait a few free kicks, obviously kick 3 goals, which is pretty huge. So he went to the forward line and rested to big effect. BJ at least scored a goal. It was a pretty nice one, but yeah, his efforts on the ground were pretty lackluster. His disposals never one of his strengths. Whereas Bolter was influencing the contest. Talking about some of the other midfield battles, I think Ross and Harley was by far the most fun matchup,
Oh yeah,
especially for like a spin bowl, like where you're not expecting like a Dangerfield first five in their heyday, but there was a bit to go on to like these up and coming youngsters. Obviously,
as
Ross is a bit older.
as much as it
Uh,
would have been nice to see Lawler versus Reed,
mm,
I think Jack Ross has had a fantastic games as interim captain. Whilst Nank's been out,
yeah.
and he's done some fantastic work all season long. But like the matchup, from what I saw of the highlights against Harley Reid, was fantastic.
Oh yeah, he had a very influential performance, and he was definitely one of the players. You know, where I was talking about Richmond not quite having too many clean ball users, especially in that midfield group. He was one that had a very good impact with ball at hand. Almost 90% ball efficiency for 29 disposals and enough contested possession. Yeah, 19 contested possession. To be going at 90% efficiency, it was pretty amazing. So he had a really big game. The other midfielder that had a very good game was Kane McAuliffe, who
Yes.
sort of filled out the Presti injury, had a huge impact. Not nearly as clean as Jack Ross. Turned over the ball a tiny bit, but got the Richmond moving forward. And again, it was just those easier clearance wins. Meanwhile, the Eagles can get value out of a chunk of players. Cole, I'm assuming, played hurt because he did have like a little injury sticker and he just looked to be slow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you know, I'm not too sure. But so I'll give him a bit of a reprieve. But Duggan, Hewitt, Schoenberg, I know it's harsh putting on this list, but he is a mature age. We're just like not impactful for 3 of the more experienced players out there. As I said, I think the positive for Eagles were ground level, Sands, Reed and Kelly. Oh, sorry. Ground level play from Reed and Kelly was really good, but overall there were some pretty terrible efforts on the ground. But you know, as I said, I think the main thing is like, whilst the Eagles didn't play like, I can't really accuse them of playing soft footy, but the fact that they got out damaged by a Tiger side away from home with so many injuries was just probably not really acceptable at this point. You know, talking about the 2 wins earlier in the season. Again, they were sort of playing with house money for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
That well's one try. Like the 2 smashings, you get a winnable game against a very injury rattled side. Hadn't won all season. Not saying that Richmond can't win this game, and it's like disrespectful because Richmond have put in efforts at times.
Well, you
I
look
think
at
their offense is slowly getting better.
you look at the performance we put against Melbourne, at least for those first 3 quarters,
Yeah.
and besides the umpires, doing what they did, it shows that we can still be quite competitive, despite the injuries.
Mm,
It's just about, I guess, finding the right opponents that it plays really well into. West Coast was
yeah.
clearly one of those. I believe we play West Coast again later in the year. That'll probably be another really close game, I imagine. But then, like, when
Mm,
we go up against Essendon in Dreamtime in a couple of weeks, when we face Carlton again, I think in the second half of the season, that could be another potential
mm.
danger game for them, not necessarily for
Might know
us.
if that's a spoon bowl by that time.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
even a rematch against North, I think like we learned a lot of lessons from losing to North 2 weeks ago, and that I think coming up against them later on in the season, especially once they've probably not been down a peg or two, coming up against tougher opponents, um, it'll be very interesting to see how the teams look on the second go around.
Yeah, exactly. And just sort of actually I will mention the particular performance. We're talking about the injury of Bontempelli moving forward. But maybe we don't have to care because this is the era of John Tempelli. Jonty Fall is back in action. 3 goals. Coach slamming him in the presser before this. Maybe it wasn't this week. I can't remember when he was like, they said, oh, we probably would drop him, but we just don't have the players. But he was back and he gave, I think it was Gibney a bath or someone. No, sorry, Gibney took Lynch, and Lynch sort of lost. That's right. He beat up the former Tiger.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, Tyler Young. Yes. No, it was really good to see John have a good game. Like what he just needs as a young player is just that confidence. And when you're getting smashed against really solid AFL defenses week in, week out, it's hard to have that confidence, even though you have been backed in by your coach. But like being able to kick 3 goals, is a good confidence builder. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks he'll be able to kind of, especially with Lynch out there, having Lynch out there now and like not be injured, knock on wood, makes such a huge difference because he does say that number 1 defender, and is able to play and like is able to drag other defenders onto him, and that frees up John, that frees up McKelty, and it allows our smaller forwards to have a bit of more of an impact as well.
I think the biggest problem with Jonty Fold too was he's often a tough spot leader. Obviously, when you're playing that third toll, it's you get less attention, but you're leading to harder positions. You're often leading wide or you're leading up and higher degree away from goal. And I think with Jonty Fold's confidence, I think there was a few matches where I'm not saying he was afraid to lead, but I think his overall shot totals went down because, as I said, I don't know. I just had the feeling he wasn't in the contest and it was clearly a confidence issue. But, I'm not going to accuse him of not taking leads because he thought he was going to miss them. But I think the advantage of kicking 3 goals, not all of them being from easy angles, was that you have a bit more confidence coming in. And I think that's the biggest knock on Jonty is he didn't have any commanding presence.
Yeah.
But he did have his first taste of it this match, which is really good. I want him to take more of that into the upcoming games, and hopefully he can just build from scratch because, as I said, playing him early is on the back foot and, it can knock your confidence, and you just hate to see it because, it's easy to call him a crab, but, some players just get a more chance to develop properly than others, and Jonty was sort of in that awkward characteristic. But when you get a chance, hopefully he gets a chance to make a statement in the AFL.
One player I do want to see a little bit more is Tom Sims. He is, I believe, still currently out with injury, unfortunately. But I know he will likely be the one to take over Lynch's role when Lynch retires. So I want to hope that they put it, because he's a massive body for a full forward. So I hope that he's able to get a lot of development done in the VFL once healthy, and then every now and then either come in for Jonty, or same with Liam Fawcett as well. Actually, Liam Fawcett's a year older than these guys. So those 2 players, come in every now and then either for Jonty or for McKelty or whoever, and just kind of get that extra AFL experience under Lynch whilst we still have him. Because you can only learn so much in the VFL. Let's be real. So just having that extra time with our only full forward until he retires, they just need to take advantage of that as much as they can to try and extend or try and speed up a bit of that development time. Otherwise, once Lynch retires, we're probably going to struggle a bit more in the forward line department. But that's knock on wood, remains to be seen kind of thing.
I think it was always going to be an awkward transition. I've talked about it before how I don't think Tom J. Lynch is. So I don't know why I ended the J. But yeah, he's a bit of an awkward player to build your forward line because I think he's always a player that's played better with support around him.
Yep, and that's why he works so well
really
with
good
Rewall
too.
That's why him and Rewall works so
well.
Yeah,
exactly. Rewall, ideally, if you were just to orchestrate a career, you would rather finish on a Rewall to direct a new forward line than Tom Lynch. But awkward role. He tries hardish, and I think he does the best when he commands attention, which makes his game a bit uglier. But again, we've seen a bit more positive signs because, as I said, when he's the main focus and they're defending the others, like he's been a bit inaccurate and it's sort of been costing him this year. So,
Yeah, a little bit.
as I said, he's almost got to be playing decoy at this point. I think that's his best role, unless his goal kicking form turns around. And as I said, try and set up. But the last thing I sort of want to talk about, although you are just flicking
I was
over
highlighting
this.
it because I wasn't sure if you were going to remember to touch on it. That's all.
Oh, no. I was going to say, because I wasn't actually sure how much you were going to talk about Richmond, because I know you didn't watch the game or whatever. So I thought I'd highlight a few Richmond things. The win not only gives them their first win, but in terms of differential wins, which they have been beaten in most categories throughout the year, they've now got differential win, if you can call it that, in age and game experience. So they were more experienced outfit than the Eagles, which is the first time they've been able to do that this year. So at least they played like it on the weekend. Obviously, first time they've outscored the opponents in player ratings. Hitouts, they've actually had the net positive win, even though the Eagles technically played a certified ruckman. Hitouts to advantage as well. Goal assists and points from stoppage. So all of them were their first differential wins. They have had other differential wins here and there throughout the season.
Yes.
But, as I said, it was just good to see a bit of it. And I think, as I said, the main thing about this was just their centre bounce unit. They've been solid. Maybe their ball use has been a bit lacking, but you've seen the efforts and, them trying. And this was just a game where they were able to pull out the maximum efficiency.
Yeah,
and it led to them win.
I'm very proud of the boys for finally getting the monkey off their back, so to say, in terms of not having a win under the belt as of yet. Again, I'm very impressed with what I saw of Ollie Hayes-Brown, in terms of his development coming from a basketball background, quote unquote Scott Pendlebury style. I think our backline for its struggles did look fairly decent. It was good to see Jaden Short back in after his wife gave birth last week. Vlosten and Broad are still very much struggling, partially due to age and just starting to slow down a bit more. But I think they're still providing a lot. And then our forward line. I'm still not entirely sold on Steely Green at the moment. He has kind of had a bad run for about a month or so, but I know in terms of injuries, we don't have a small forward kind of ready to slot into that position right now, which is fine. But otherwise, I think our midfield looks great. With Prestia going out this week with the injury that allows Taranto to pretty much come straight back in from concussion. So it'll be interesting to see how him and Hopper now look with just two of them in there rather than three. I know we're going to be missing Lawler, I think for at least another couple of weeks, which sucks.
Yeah.
But
to be fair, Cumming winning.
Yes, Sam Cumming and Sam Grill both look great. Rechko looks fantastic coming off half back. Tom Burton has looked really good on the wings, especially with Hugo sadly also going out. So we've got some pretty solid players that are on a good development track right now. Unfortunately, it is being massively fast tracked, and it will be a team that does get thumped still a lot more. But I'm very happy from what I've seen so far this season.
Yeah, I haven't looked at their schedule, so I hope there's a.
We play the Crows this week, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So there's going to be another thumping kind of right there. But
yeah, maybe. As I said, a win's a win.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't take that away from you.
Exactly. But yes, Dion Prestia out with a calf issue. Was picked up very early in the game, so hopefully it wasn't too bad. And he might only be out just for a couple of weeks, just purely because of his history and his age. And then on the MRO side of things, Elijah Hewitt was fined $3,000 for striking Nick Floston. But otherwise there's not too much more to say in terms of this game.
Yeah, I must admit, it's a shame. I thought Elijah Hewitt was going to be the a good compliment for Harley Reid, the next Eagle to sort of make that next midfield. But yeah, he's really dropped off a cliff. He's in, unfortunately, near delisting phase unless he can turn it around. So, whilst, the Eagles are finding other people like, Milan Murdoch and all that sort of thing to sort of support him out. Yeah, as I said, you can't get too ahead of yourself for the Eagles because you're still finding out some of these players. And yeah, as I said, they've just got a bit more finessing to go. But so did the Tigers. But at least the Tigers, who've been forced to play a lot of depth, getting some good things out of them.
Yeah,
even if it is like very mixed.
I think the Eagles are still on a good trajectory in terms of their rebuild, but it's still going to be a lot of pain before game.
Yeah, exactly.
All
right. Shall we move on to the Cattery?
Yes, going down over to Geelong, where the Cats hosted the Roos. And with a 49-point margin, I was actually quite impressed with what I saw from North in this game. The Cats did win out 21,935 to 13,886.
Yeah, and pretty much, it was not too bad. It was really an offensive belting for 20 minutes by the Cats that gave the margin this amount of levity. But it was otherwise a close game. I did hear it was a bit error-riddled at times, except obviously when Geelong brought the game open. Manor, Holmes, and Cherry were the three players to really make an impact of this game. Apparently, Cherry broke the ruck contested possession record, which I think was 26. I have no idea why I didn't actually write it down, but yeah, I'll just check that quickly. Contested possession 26, which was 14 more than Tom Atkins, who is a pretty good contested player. So yeah, that was the next best on the ground. So yeah, it was a small intercept win by the Cats that led for this big margin. They scored very efficiently off turnover, 83 points coming off it. At least North weren't like turning the ball over ridiculously. Like their ball use, wasn't that bad. I think they just really couldn't find, they just couldn't get the ball in dangerous spots in their forward 50. But I can't really say from the outlooking in, and from what I heard of the people that did watch this game, that there was much systematically wrong. It was just, Geelong's defensive and offensive rebound off intercept was way too strong for this building ball movement team.
It was basically just a decent team on track from their rebuild against a really good team. Like that was kind of it.
Yeah. Honestly, it feels like a shame that was a bit of a blowout because, yeah, as I said, like, North did show a bit of, like, the signs that they may be moving on to better looks. As I said, it's just, like, Geelong will do that to you. Like I said, obviously losing last week, you almost felt like they would have a moment of, like, this sort of game where they'll tear a team apart. But, like, North didn't let it just come to them. It's just like Geelong.
Yeah.
Geez. When they feel slighted, they can just rack up offense.
They will very much trounce you if you let them. But yeah, like this game also really goes to show how much of a difference, and we've talked about this with the Bulldogs and Tim English, like how much of a difference Sherry makes. Like again, we've talked about him for the past 2 years about being one of the best ruckmen in the competition. I still very much put him up there in the top 5, very much so. But like without him, this game, genuinely, I think this could have been a bigger blowout of a score. Like I know it was only in like the fourth quarter that it got blown out to this much, but it could have been so much worse early on.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I think it was the third quarter, wasn't it? I can't remember. But anyway, either way, it was pretty big.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Because yeah, the only reason it's not top 3 this year is just because the game's out from the blood wiping incidents.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's at the point. Probably hard to say that it's better than Gawn or Jackson. Grundy, he's had a few down games. So
I was talking about this with my mate at work this morning, and we were kind of just talking about like top kind of like best rucks of the league right now, and it's very much Gawn, Grundy, Jack, not in a specific order, but Gawn, Grundy, Jackson. You'd put Sherry up there.
Cherry in there, and then probably
English.
Ooh,
purely for the fact that he makes such a difference.
Again, this year, maybe not. Yeah,
because like there
honestly, there's
isn't.
not that much other
You could probably
contention.
go
Wits
Lloyd
has been
Meek, but
awful.
he has taken a little bit of a backseat this season.
Yeah.
In a rotating
Honestly,
rock
Jordan
position.
Sweet's almost there.
Jordan Sweet
There
stepped up a
really
lot
hasn't
this
been that
season,
much.
but yeah, this season,
Yeah, there's really not that many high-performing ruckmen in the league this year, which is a bit weird.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is very interesting that because of the ruck rule changes, a lot of like somewhat more high profile rucks have taken a little bit more of a step
Mm.
back. Granted, in Richmond's case, Nankervis has been injured, so he hasn't really been able to prove all that much
Yeah.
with the new ruck rules.
I was
But
gonna say there's also been a few injuries.
I,
Like even even Collingwood, as I said, we know Cameron's sort of playing with a
yeah,
bit of
Darcy
niggle.
Cameron's been playing with
Jared
an
Witts has been
injury. Jared
reported
Witts,
to be playing a bit hurt.
Kieran Briggs hasn't looked that good at all.
No,
Same with Riley O'Brien,
also,
Pitt Net. Yeah, there's a ton of
yeah,
rocks that are just
again, probably a bit more injury more than pure form. But yeah. Yeah, it's not that much else I want to talk about this match, really.
no, there isn't really too much to really cover.
Even looking at the stats. Zane Desma kicked another 3 goals. Again, it's nice. It's very up and down, but at least he's sort of making a bigger impact when he's able to get in games. But yeah, as I
I
said,
saw a post from Useless AFL Stats on Facebook. I think this morning, and it said that this is the first time in about I think it's less than 10 years. So I think it was like maybe 2018, something like that, where all
yeah.
three feline based teams, so Brisbane, Geelong, Richmond, have all won in the same week. But
Yeah.
one question I did want to ask, and I don't know if this has been answered, is this the first time that these, not necessarily these three teams, but at least three teams have all beaten other teams that have a set of brothers on them? Because Geelong played North, who have Zane Dersma. Richmond played West Coast, which have Willem Dersma. And Brisbane played the Bombers, who have Xavier Dersma. And they all lost.
I will say maybe, maybe not, but this is the first time where I think they've all beaten animals that I don't think they would normally win in a fight. Like, if you gave me a real life fight,
Between
I
a
don't
cat
think
and a kangaroo, a
cat's beating
kangaroo
a
would fuck
kangaroo.
that cat up. Sorry for my swearing, but like, my
I
God.
legitimately think a well-trained hawk would beat a tiger. Just because of the aerial advantage.
Yeah,
I can't see a tiger being able to. Like, you would just pick, you would just be like picking battle. And obviously the fight between a lion and a fighter jet is probably inching towards the fighter jet.
You would think so.
Yeah. You would think so.
But yeah,
yeah, that's about all I can offer on
I'm a big
that.
fan of those kinds of like useless little statistics because I just think they're really fun. On the injury
Oh,
side of
yeah.
things, Jack Henry was a late change for this game with foot soreness. I imagine he wouldn't actually be out for very long. In this case, he probably just needs a bit of a rest. So he'll probably be in as far as per normal next week. But let's jump over now to our Saturday night clash between Carlton and St Kilda, also down at Marvel Stadium, and with a 39-point margin, St Kilda won out. The rivalry match with Jack Silvani and Tom DeConey against their old side, of course. Scores were 16-12, 108 to 9-15, 69.
Yes, and I said for the last 2 weeks, they've sort of had a bit of a break for being proper Carlton. Despite the losses, they did look a bit better in their form and how they've been losing games. But this was a promising return to form as Carlton got 2-8 to 11-5 in the second half of this game, giving all the Carlton haters plenty of food for this round. And the 4 ex-Carlton players for St Kilda, a bit of schadenfreude. Obviously, you had the 2 big ones in Tom DeConing and Jack Silvani, but Liam Stocker and Jack Carroll also used to play for them.
I forgot that Stocker played for Carlton. I knew Carroll did because he was like only come over in the last 2 seasons or so. But
yeah, Carlton specifically traded up to get Stocker, and then traded him off because he didn't have that much impact. So it's good to see him get a bit of feet. I don't think he had that big an impact in this game, to be fair, but it is what it is. They still got the win. Really big third quarter that sealed it. Thanks to Cooper Sharman having a great one with his 3-goal assist, 13 score involvement game. He had an absolutely huge game for a player that's normally a bit inconsistent, so it's good to see a bit more showing of his top side. And I will say, talking about rucks, that this was the best Marshall-De Koning tandem we've seen so far this year. Again, I didn't actually watch this game, watch a few highlights, but again, it didn't really seem like there was a lot of resistance from Carlton in that last half. Despite a lot of back half entries from Carlton, the Saints defended well and forced long shots, and the Saints midfield absolutely beat up on a very lackluster, at least statistic-wise, centre performance unit from Carlton, which will be a big blow for them because, again, normally they at least get points from stoppages and, a bit of forward and movement from it, but there wasn't even that, or at least not in the scoreboard, score line, I should say, a stat line, I should really say. So it wasn't a huge difference in the stats, but it was a massive difference in terms of impact, as the Saints were able to get a roll, whereas Carlton looked just direly impotent all night.
Yeah, it's not looking good for the Blues, unfortunately. And I know that, in terms of how the media views things and probably how a lot of the fans view things, it is Michael Voss's head on the chopping block. However, that's not how I see things, because I think they're on a very similar path to how Richmond were and how the Bombers were, where it's not the coaching staff that's the issue. It's the higher ups. It's the ones that are financing all of this. It's the board of directors and all of that. Because for Carlton especially, and they've had this issue like long since before even the Malthouse era, which granted that was a very brief era, but point stands. They're not the ones that are meant to be making the calls on the football department, but they kind of are. And that was an issue that Richmond had for a very long time. Which is why, like in 2016, we cleaned out our entire board, brought in new people. Obviously, we had Brendan Gale and Peggy O'Neill leading the way on that. They backed Dimmer in, even though 2016 was not a good year for us, and look what it resulted in. Like, I think Carlton are in that sort of similar position, and it's very much affecting the way the coaching staff can do what they want to do with this team. So if they're able to put a little bit more trust in Voss for at least one more year, but clean out the higher ups and bring in people who will just let the football department do their thing, I think Carlton will end up being in a lot better of a position. In terms of this game, though, right now, it's not looking very good, and that does not even include the injuries that they sustained in this game either.
Yeah, look, as I said, it's hard because I do legitimately think, I agree with what you say, but I also think that Patrick Voss is Patrick Voss?
Michael Voss.
Michael Voss.
Prayer on the brain.
I don't think he does very well with midfields. I know he is a midfield champion and all that, but I really think they've gone downhill. And, honestly, the players that they've got, in terms of Chera, actually, maybe sort of forget. I don't think Chera's been as bad as this year, but, especially Walsh and Cripps. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that they were, their namesake, I really think, as I said, Walsh probably was worst game of the match, but it's the efforts, it's up and down, it's the defensive performances, and as I said, Cripps is just way off the mark this year. He is having a near Clary 2024 sort of year.
Yeah, it has been a very, very quiet season in terms of his numbers.
Yeah.
Either he's carrying an injury, which seems to be quite common for him as of late, or he's just been getting a lot more attention on field from defensive-minded players, whether it's been a tag, whether it's just been more defensive tackling, defensive pressure on him, which, affects the way he can either get the ball or pass the ball off, that sort of thing. But yeah, his impact has just definitely gone down the drain in a lot of these games. And even though in the close ones, he still looked pretty good. But when it gets to a scoreline like this, it really highlights how little of an impact he's kind of had recently.
Yeah, and I think that's like when you bring up Essendon, it's like the real question that they've got to ask themselves is like, do we stick with the older experience in our midfield or really try and break the mold with something new? Because Essendon are fairly stubborn, like with their midfield lineups, even though it hasn't really been performing for the last few years. Um, so it's going to be interesting whether Carlton do the same or, because as I said, it's so hard because simultaneously, it's particularly where, well, stoppages in general is like where they've won games this year. But I don't know. It's also shooting them in the foot a little bit because, again, defensively, they're so poor.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, as I said, they're just fading out of matches. As I said, they don't have any outside accountability. As I said, you know, and like, I'm not going to say like, well, as I said, the fact that they've got Jagger Smith playing fairly well and it's still not made much of a difference is a bit of a concern too. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little
That,
bit of like a hard call sometimes because you don't know,
mm,
like we don't exactly know what exactly is going on in the four walls either. Like
yeah.
there could be some very bad mental issues in terms of like just looking at the game and how they kind of see the game, and just
Mm,
when things don't go their way, how bad that's affecting their mentalities, especially for the younger players. Like we look at Harry Dean and how much of an impact he's had in that backline when he's been in. But like
mm,
just kind of the and again, and this goes back to like Jonty Fall, for example, and that lack of confidence. If you're just
yeah.
gonna if these younger players are just gonna keep getting beaten week in and week out, like it just really, really hits that mentality and that confidence level like really, really hard. And if these second half fade outs are gonna continue to be a thing, it will leave like long lasting scars in terms of being able to
Mm.
overcome those sorts of hurdles.
Yeah, I remember in Port before they went into like really bad tarp territory. This was like 08, 09 after the grand final massacre. Yeah, they lost a lot of games come from behind. In fact, Carlton, I remember, was one of the games that they absolutely blew a solid lead when they were just looking to get their season back on track.
Mm.
And yeah, it sort of stuck with them for a while, just sort of known as chokers. Because again, from that '07 premiership, like there was enough young core to think that they may be around for the next few years, but yeah, they sort of nosedive for that. And, it does affect teams. And you hope it doesn't. You hope that it's just a bit of luck, things to normalize a bit, or maybe it's just a difference in coaching style. But yeah, as I said, you don't want to ingrain it in your players too much.
No, you really don't. And it's just about again trying to rebuild that sort of confidence on field and just trying to back yourself in, like trust that you
Mm,
have the skill to be able to perform your role to the best of your ability, regardless of what kind of opponent you're coming up against, whether it's the best full forward in the competition, the best ruck in the competition, whatever. Like just
mm,
having this sort of faith in yourself to perform regardless of what the outcome ends up being. Like that could be one of the most
mm.
important kind of mental fortitudes to have in a game like this. And it's just
Yeah.
trying to keep that sustained regardless of what the scoreline may end up being. Which does make it a little bit harder in terms of like if you're a
Mm,
defender, especially because you have to try and stop that score from happening. Um, but just it sucks that Carlton is in this sort of position. I mean, in terms of rivalry standpoints, I'm glad that Carlton
yeah.
is in this position because as a Richmond supporter,
Yeah.
but like
Oh, it's so funny.
in terms of like the game as a whole, this is not something you want to
Mm,
see, and it does suck in that regard because you want all teams to be competitive. That's what makes for an
yeah.
exciting league. But this is just
Yeah,
how it is.
exactly. Yeah, talking about things you don't want to see, you've got a bit of work to do as we go through the injuries and the MRO.
Yeah, so as I had mentioned, Harry Dean is out with a groin injury. I don't know if it's on the minor or on the major, but hopefully he won't be out for too long because again, he does have that really good impact in the back line. Lockie Cohen suffered a head knock. No confirmation on if it's like a concussion or anything like that. So he might be okay for next week. That currently remains to be seen. Dan Butler for the Saints is out with a left hamstring issue. Again, he's been on and off for the past couple of seasons now with leg injuries. So there's a fair chance that retirement might be in his cards or at least something he's probably considering how many injuries he's had as of late. Jack Higgins was laid out with concussion or concussion symptoms. So if he's in concussion protocols, he won't play this week. And Darcy Wilson was out late change with an illness, but he will likely be in this week, which should be no issue. On the MRO side of things, Patrick Cripps was fined $1,000 for a chicken wing tackle against Hugo Garcia. I did see this. It's kind of a dirty act.
Lucky.
Very lucky to only be a fine, considering the history of chicken wing tackles in the league over the years and how varied they have been in terms
especially in Carlton.
Yes. Harry Dean was also fined $1,000 for misconduct against Liam Ryan, and Hugo Garcia was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire.
Yeah. All right. So we go to one of the more interesting contests, but still weirdly straightforward in the Swans and the Demons.
Yes. The scoreline doesn't tell the entirety of the story on this one, but I think it's kind of fairly safe to say that most people would have gone the Sydney route in terms of like their tipping or just like who you believe was going to win this game. But yes, we're going up to the SCG with the Swans and the Demons, and with a 17-point margin. The Swans did win out 19-17-131 to 17-12-114.
Yeah, and what I say was like almost academic from the Swans is they had an insane amount of meterage and possessions, and their score per inside 50 rate was pretty good. But the Demons tried their best to hold on with them, and it made for a great contest. They still had some decent pressure. The great stoppage work that allowed them to keep up with one of the most complete offensive teams in the competition at the moment. Despite Disco Turner getting the same amount of goals as his direct opponent, Charlie Curnow, and Pickett having an absolute massive 2-goal, 4-score involvement, 2 clearance, 222 metres gained fourth quarter, almost bringing them back on the level. It would be the other Sydney recruit that would absolutely steal the show in this game with a 7-goal haul to Malcolm Rosas, which more than doubled his already solid enough year total in terms of goal tally.
Yeah, what an unbelievable signage from Sydney to get him from the Suns. Like, I know we talked about this in the off-season that it was either between Sydney and Richmond that he was going to go to, and he ended up going to Sydney, and what a difference he has made in terms of how their small forwards actually function. Like, he's done so much good work. If he's eligible for the Rising Star, I expect him to get that this week. But
no,
he's not.
He's been in the league for a little while.
Fair enough. And in that case,
I think at least for 3 or 4.
I hope Sam Cumming gets it then. In that case, praise and praying. But yeah, no, he had a fantastic performance, and that's not even to mention like Curnow. I think kicked 3 goals, who did fantastic work.
No, Curnow that was last week. He had 1 goal for and not much impact at all.
Oh my god. Okay, never mind then. But no, like
sorry, I had to test the bubble. 12% kicking efficiency as well.
He
to rub salt in the wound.
That doesn't help, but I mean, he still presented well. He did bring the ball to ground a lot. That's what I remember seeing. He did still do. Good
his
things.
Conversion's just been off. Yeah, like honestly, like everything that Charlie Curnow's done has been like fine. It's just his goal kicking,
which is kind of standard.
I think the thing that has helped, I think
you can take the man out of Carlton, but you can't take Carlton out of the man.
Yeah. But what you did read is, I think, is the 4-goal 1 performance of Joel Arty. He has been really good this year and presented really well. Taking a lot of pressure off other players. Even Logan McDonald had 3-goal performance. It's not too many players not having a big offensive performance this year.
And I'm sure we'll touch on it with a couple of the points later on. But like, Heaney is unbelievable. Like he still does so much insane work in that midfield. Like I was watching I did see some of this game like live, but then I did go back and watch some of the highlights and stuff as well. And just what he does is just unbelievable stuff.
It's funny because like technically this is probably like a middle of the road Heaney game for some of his performances this year, and it's still like well above average. He's got 5 coaches' votes. Top 3
it's not just like the
disposals,
the contested possessions or whatever. It's just like all those little things that he does as well. that have the more profound
Yeah.
impact. Because that's what a good leader does.
Yeah,
And he's just unbelievable.
yeah. Yeah, honestly, I think his last year was sort of underrated in terms of like how much he was sort of carrying it. And then now he's got things around him. He's just been able to distribute a lot more and really get other players involved. And it's even like something like you have so much of an offensive threat is that you can even like, have that hard tag in James Jordan, who again, we're still very impressed with how much he's able to positively influence the game. Like, he didn't really have much of an impact on Cozzy Pickett. Obviously, Cozzy is having an absolutely insane year. But, like, okay, yeah, that tag fails, but he still has 20 possessions, 6 tackles, 4 clearances, and, just decent enough game.
He's probably...
I think he also had a few score involvements. Yeah, 9 score involvements.
James Jordan is probably the best two-way tagger in the game right now. Like, the fact that he can run both ways and still play a tagging role and nullify the influence of another player. Like, I don't think there's anyone else like it in the league right now.
Yeah, and again, technically getting a victory against his former team as well. It's so weird. Like, he's a player that you almost always just think he's a Sydney player through and through. I can't even remember him in a Melbourne jumper, and yet
I cannot remember either. Like,
he is another example of Sydney's very savvy season pickups.
And
I know there's been a lot in the news about the academy picks and how much Sydney's
like that too that are like, you forget that they played for other teams. Like, I know it's very common. Like, when you look at players like, your Lockie Neals, and your like your Horn Francis, like the more profile, like high profile kind of players, people very much remember that they played for other teams prior, but you can also still only picture them with their current teams just because of how long and how influential they have been since they've been there. But like, it's such a weird thing to think about. Like, you wouldn't even think the fact that Brodie Grundy has been at 3 teams already. Like, most people remember him as just at the Collingwood or at Sydney at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even Jai Sarong, I think, will be a player that will get a bit like that.
Oh, so, yeah, he's been doing some fantastic work since being brought into Sydney. Like, it's...
And at this rate, might be Malcolm Rose's junior too.
Very true. But yeah, go on. Next point.
So again, want to talk about Sydney's offense because they're right up there with movement stats. And I just want to point out something very interesting. They are using their hands to do it. They have the lowest kick percentage, not kicking efficiency, just the choice to either kick or handball. Though they do have the second highest meters per kick when they do choose to kick the ball. And they average about 4 meters per handball, leading them in this game to get a whopping 1,000 meters gained by hand. If you're wondering, Nick Blakey is the leader of this stat category with 9.1 meters per handball and is the highest player with significant numbers of handball this season. Otherwise, it would be Jamaris Ugle-Sagan, 20... I think it was 31.3 meter handball or something ridiculous.
That's insane.
Which is the one handball he's done per year.
That's insane that they have been able to move the ball in this game over a kilometer just by hand.
Yeah.
That's...
I read a stat from someone that normally the AFL average is 5% of your meters gained is by handballs. And in this game, it was 15% by Sydney meters gained per handball. So again, pretty big.
Well, I mean, that does kind of that just continues to highlight why they are currently the best team in the league. Like, because they're so proficient by hand, they only go by foot if it's warranted. They will opt for faster handballs because they're such a quick team and are able to move the ball that quickly. Not just by hand, but obviously with their running capabilities. When Goulding comes back, that it's an even more of a difference maker. They've become just so good at getting through traffic and even being able to just get from one wing to the other if they need to transition. They're able to do it so quickly and surprise so many teams with how quick they can do it. And that's why they've become currently like unstoppable in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and their most impressive thing, it does switch also too from defensive plays as well. When they're able to get that intercept, they're able to make that quick transition because it's not like they're playing defensively loose either. I know Melbourne had a really good game and they sort of run with them. But, as I said, I think that they still had a fair bit amount of outside control overall in this game. I think Melbourne, while they did play above their skins to stay into this game, I still think like Sydney would have been fairly comfortable and confident with the way that this match played out. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Also, just as a side note, I was actually wrong. It's 38.3 meters, which is the one handball by Jamari Ugle-Hagan this year.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
which I sort of want to see because that is a huge handball.
That is a monster of a handball. Yeah, like
yeah.
That's like that's well, if you're looking at the way the
that's
umpire adjudicates it, that's two
kick
kicks.
Probably. Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So a bit about Melbourne, because again, I've sort of been going through a few stats. Is they've officially found the goal face after a frustrating 2025. They've got the same comparative league shots per game, where even though it's increased, it's about the same as the whole league's shots per game has increased. And their goals per inside 50 has increased by a nice 4% this year. They're the team that's most outscoring their X score by 8 per match. I think the second most must be Collingwood, because I think I mentioned them before.
Yes.
That's where I saw that. And the encouraging thing is it is very split, with 7 players over 10 goals per season. Mychek leading the goal tally with only 13, but they're still finding a lot of avenues to goal. If they can keep this out, then it allows them in free agency to hunt for a more damaging KPF. It doesn't really seem like Van Rooyen will take this number 1 slot. But if they fail, they aren't too bad in this forward line, and they're still leagues ahead of what they've been serving up for the last few years.
Yes, but in mentioning Brody Mychek, he unfortunately is out with a hamstring issue this week. From this game, so he will be out for at least this week. Fair chance it'll probably be like a 2 to 3 weeker, I would imagine, which does not help in terms of continuing to stay on top of their successful forward conversions. However, like just in terms of their performance against Sydney, like they stood up pretty well for a team that again, we've talked about this before. New coach, new assistant coaches, new game plan. Loss of talent. The reshuffling that they've had to do, and they've been able to still be a strong competitive team with only very minor downsides in a couple of spots. Little spots in the forward line, little spots in the defense, little spots in the midfield. But when they're on, like they're still very dangerous and are very much a smoky against a lot of teams.
Exactly, and obviously we're going to talk about a very interesting game because that's where 2 of their players gone to. But they got to both Petracca and Oliver got coaches' votes in the Gold Coast vs Greater Western Sydney. So this might be the best overall, like the most wholesome midfield reset out there, because obviously both the players that left, I don't think the players that thought they were on bad terms. Obviously they'd won a premiership, but like the situation had gotten a bit toxic in Melbourne. So both of them go out, find good form, and Melbourne are able to reset and find good players to replace them straight away. Again, Tom Sparrow. Geez, what a year from, a player that was sort of, not that many people had earmarks on. I will say, I'm pretty sure I had him in my players to watch for 2026. So shout outs to me.
You might have actually. I think you did.
I feel like it. It's the sort of player I feel like I would pick. So yeah. And but yeah, again, so.
And then and like even though he was also a very highlighted player at St Kilda, but getting Jack Steele into this midfield and has kind of just become like an underrated powerhouse is like it is a huge difference, because again, and like that's not even to mention the fact that Jack Viney is still injured, so they don't even have their quote unquote number 1 pressure player out there either. Like Steele is doing a lot of that heavy lifting for them, and it frees up Cozzy to play that midfield role that he loves to do, and then you've got Latrell as well, having a lot of impact on the outside. Like they've been doing so much good work, and that's why that.
I mean, heck, even Max Heath had his best game for the year. So
and he was matching up a lot more on Grundy, because Gorn was playing a little bit more forward, and like he still had very solid impact. Like I genuinely think that losing Petracca and Oliver, and making these changes in the midfield was very much a win-win for both sides,
Yeah.
or all three sides.
Absolutely.
But speaking of, that is exactly where we're going now for our last game of the round, the expansion cup between the Gold Coast Suns and the GWS Giants. Now officially the Petracca versus Oliver matchup, which I think is a lot more interesting to look at in this perspective, just because of their histories. I nearly got a perfect round in my tips this week. If it wasn't for this game, because I tipped the Giants, and I'm very sad about it. But with a 20-point margin, the Suns did win out up on the Gold Coast, 11-17-83 to 8-15-63. The weather wasn't great. The temperature wasn't great, which is why it's a very low-scoring, very inefficient kind of game in terms of scoring shots. But it was still a very fun affair.
I actually think the temperature was fine. It just sort of got dewy. I don't think this was like a greasy affair. It was just, as I said, turned into a very cold night up in People's First Stadium, especially up on the coast. So, yeah, it was very greasy. It was a bit of an ugly affair. But the Gold Coast just made the most of their opportunities. For the first half, I actually thought the Giants were probably, maybe not the better team, but they definitely had a lot of opportunities. Mm-hmm. Obviously, horrendous conversion by both teams. But, believe it or not, the Suns actually scored above their expected score for the night. Thanks primarily to the goals of Petracca and Ugle-Hagan. The latter turning into a very almost start. He had a few influences, but didn't quite impact the play. And you're like, oh, well, Ugle-Hagan, it's good to see him starting to get going. They'll show signs that he'll be up and running in the next 3 games or something. And then, bang! He turned into one of the most dangerous players on the ground that game. It was very good to see. And yeah, apart from that, the Suns sort of had the win that they expected in the air, while GWS had some very good ground level pressure. I thought in the conditions that the ball use from Gold Coast movement was actually pretty good. I think there's a reason they were able to get more looks. John Noble and Bodie Uland, especially off the halfback line, were really, really great. And Powell influenced the game both inside and out. And really, I think it was just the further this game on, the more that Gold Coast looked like the most complete unit. Whereas the Giants, and I'll specifically talk about the area which they're just falling apart in, still just looked a bit mediocre. Like their back half movement at times was really, really good, but that was about it, really.
Yeah, I think that in terms of just functionality, I think the Giants' backline still looks fine. Again, they're not really missing anything major. They've got Yash, your Buckleys, your Taylors, your Licaliers, your what's his name? The Norwegian guy, or the one that looks like a Norwegian guy.
Norwegian?
He's not actually Norwegian. He just looks Norwegian.
Okay. I know you're talking about Iden.
No, he's Irish. It's blonde, tall.
In their backline, they have a player that looks Norwegian.
Yes, I'm blanking on his name so hard right now. It's embarrassing. Oh.
Laverde?
No, I mean Laverde maybe, but no, it's not Laverde. I'm literally going to go through the players just because now it's bothering me. Himmelberg. There you go. Thank you.
He shaved his hair off.
He just looks Norwegian to me. He's very much got Scandinavian blood, I think. But
okay.
But
Himmelberg is a very Germanish name.
They have their players, their defensive players. It's very much their core.
Yeah.
And it's not really going to be changed all that much.
Taylor's disappointing, but yeah, I don't think
Taylor is having a little bit of a down season compared to previous seasons. I think part of that might be due to the injuries he's sustained just over the past 2 years, and he's probably playing a little bit more wary. But it's not even the fact that their defense is just is struggling. It's just the fact that their midfield isn't 100% there, but they're still not performing super badly. I think they're doing okay, but it's that forward line, and you'll talk about this a little bit more in depth. It's just it's not clicking for some reason, even though it looked fine early on in the season.
Yeah, pretty much. And I will give a shout out to a few of the better performing Giants for this game. Obviously Clary I thought was really, really good. And you mentioned I mentioned Connor
You mentioned Connor
Idun,
Iden,
the not
but he did
Norwegian. uh,
he did have a good game.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and Lockie Ash and Joe Fonte is like one of the best back half pairings. Aaron Cadman also came in for a very positive influence. Harvey Thomas as well. He's still playing really well. So that was about the good for the GWS. Oh, also, Lockie Whitfield just had like chip possessions, but he doesn't really need to have as much
I'll be honest,
lethal.
I keep forgetting about Whitfield purely for the fact that he is one of their more veteran players, and I just figure he's still playing.
Yeah, well, Whitfield is like one of those ones that racks up disposals, and like again, I used to think it was very cheap, but I think his pairing up with players that can have a bit more lethality allows him just to connect and still be like a solid enough option when he wants to take the game on himself.
Yeah,
He's very smart with his actual movement, like in terms of finding space too. So yeah, yeah. I think the only other thing in terms of like on a play base is like, hey, how good is Christian Petracca? Bodie Uland had an absolutely fantastic game. And Mac Andrews, as I said, defensively is technically a bit lacking, but he did like keep Hogan very, very quiet. And his offensive output has gone through the roof this year. Ever since he made that ruck movement, which he hasn't really returned to, it's just sort of got him a bit more excited, really. I'm not saying that he, found footy boring or anything, but like, I think he's almost like it really reminded him what his role was, which is an offensive creator that plays deep in the
he
back
might have just
line.
gone back to
Sort of like your
for that
Weddles,
that ideal about
your
confidence building. Like he might have just been had
yeah,
a little, just
exactly.
might have been lacking a little bit of faith in his position, his role in the team,
Yeah, maybe.
and having putting himself, or sorry, the coach putting him in a position that kind of helps him maybe look at the game a little bit differently. Maybe came to
Yeah.
realize how important his role actually is in that backline.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, as I said, he had a pretty fantastic game. But as I said, going through what we're talking about, which is the Giants and how frustrating they are. We talked about, where they're missing players. And their defense, in terms of statistically, their opposition scores inside 50. Fine. It's actually above average. Their middle losses is significant, especially the center bounce clearance. They're absolutely getting smacked. But everything else is like not alarm bells, But as I said, their forward line cohesion is where you start into the abysmalness of the Greater Western Sydney Giants this year. Absolutely poor inside 50 retention rate. And one of the teams, 3 teams with sub 20% marks inside 50 rate. So, with the Giants lineup, we're talking about being on page with Richmond and the Eagles, which is 3 very different lineups. Like,
Oh
if you're going to
yes,
pick them on paper, you know who you're picking. And yet, statistically, at least in terms of like the key forwards, there's not much difference between them. I must admit, Eagles have a bit of upside. Richmond working there, I guess.
we're getting there.
Anyway, bottom 3 as well in average goal scorers, which doesn't help because obviously, they're so big focused, they're not getting it done, but they're not finding that many goals elsewhere. And they are bottom 3 in terms of goals per inside 50, despite being top 3 in offensive one-on-one wins. So they have such good defensive movements with pretty decent offensive on the ground pressure. It is really the 3 tall setups that's killing them. And they did play it a bit differently this week, with Stringer playing a bit more deep. I actually thought he had an okay game. He probably could tackle a bit more sometimes. But his general pressure efforts were pretty solid. And he kicked a nice goal as well. And he was like far from the most lackluster player playing in that game. But yeah, he set up a bit. But yeah, as I said, there were 3 contested marks for the game for the Giants, which, as I said, pretty lacking. And the worst thing is that, at least their forwards did get their contested marks, with the back half failing to get intercept marks or a contested mark as well. This is probably one of the worst intercept game I've seen for the Giants. Like, their movement was pretty good, but they didn't do that much to actually aggressively stop the Gold Coast. Which, to be fair, I do think the Gold Coast did move the ball better than expected for the conditions. So I'll give them a bit of credit there.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It felt like the Suns were functioning a lot better without that extra rotation from Matt Rowell, which is kind of weird to say when he is typically, their best midfielder. Again, reigning Brownlow medalist for a reason right now.
Yeah.
But like just without that extra rotation, it allowed, I guess, Miller, Anderson, even Petracca to play a little bit of like a different sort of system in terms of their rotations, and it felt like it functioned a lot better. Granted, the conditions probably just made it a little bit weird of a performance overall, like with it being a bit wet and a bit dewy. But like just in terms of that system, it felt weird that it seemed to function so much more cleanly outside of previous games.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is like, because we know their centre bounce, has been a bit poor. And it's honestly hard to tell because, again, like Petracca and Miller had like really great games. But like Anderson was okay-ish. Davies was there. Bailey Humphries, who apparently took a few centre bounces as well, had a bit of a shocker, especially in front of goals more. But like, yeah, so it was a bit, a bit Petracca and Miller heavy. I will say Ned Boyle, I think, had a pretty good game, especially in the back half. As I said, he just had a few influential plays, and he didn't have too many disposals or anything. Obviously, not gonna, but 34 hitouts, 8 hitouts to advantage, and in terms of pure ruck contest, beat out Kieran Briggs, who again is very much struggling at the moment.
Yes, he was only brought in due to injury with Nick Madden, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I don't know how long Nick Madden will be out for, but that may have a bigger impact in terms of how the Giants midfield continues to function in the long term, because again, Kieran Briggs has not looked good at all this season. I don't think the ruck changes favour him at all, because he's a bigger bodied ruck.
No.
He's not really like a leaping kind of ruck.
And it's just nothing on the ground level.
Yeah.
As I said, when you're talking about Ned Moyle, which is no one's first pick for like ground level efforts, like he did at least put a bit on. Whereas as I said, Kieran Briggs probably should be doing a tiny bit more if he wants to stay a relevant name in this league.
Yeah, I agree. The only other kind of big thing to note is a concussion injury to Ryan Angwin. So he will not be in for this week's game, and depending on the time frame, will not be in. He should be back for the week after, unless they're playing like a Thursday night clash. I don't think they are though, so they should be all good. MRO
is one thing we could probably predict about the MRO, because I know it's not out yet.
Yes, go on.
But did you see the Ben Long incident?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, basically, Ben Long had a bit of a roughish tackle on Clayton Oliver. Clayton Oliver said, "Hey, mate, I don't really like that." And he gave him a bit of clary,
Yes.
niggle and all that sort of thing.
I do actually.
Then Ben Long goes,
not this one specifically, but I know that there was a dangerous tackle late in the game, I think. Actually, no, it might have been early in the game that resulted in a head knock to the ground that could result in a suspension or at least a fine.
Yeah, that's Sam Clasey.
Yes, from Clasey. I did see that one. But no, I did not know about the Ben Long incident.
Bit of a shame because Angwin, I don't think he had a particularly good game, but he's had a bad line of injury. But yeah, anyway, Ben Long walks up to him, gives him some face slaps.
What the hell?
He just grabbed his head, really, which is pretty dumb.
The MRO has just come through. So
all right.
So just going to the Sydney and Melbourne game first. Tom Papley was fined $1,000 for engaging in a melee and wrestle with Jack Steele. Jack Steele also fined $1,000 for the same thing. And then for the Sunday game, Ben Long was fined $1,000 for striking Clary, and was also fined $1,000 for other misconduct against Clary as well. And then Sam Closey has been given a 2-match suspension for said tackle on Angwin.
Dang, so Hang on, I gotta look at that again. There was no. Wow. Dan Long is so lucky.
He is.
That should have been like. There was basically a jumper. There was an open hand slap. To Oliver. Like, it was a strike to the face. That's beggars belief to me. But anyway, yeah. Long had a pretty terrible game otherwise, so he's been a bit up and down this season. It's probably the worst thing that we can say about Gold Coast is their forward line has been very hit or miss, but so many other things are firing that I'm not going to be too cause of concern.
I'm just reading through the MRO
it's just about that midfield
now, but there is nothing specifically like descriptive in regards to the Ben Long slap. There is footage of it. Obviously, I will not show that or watch it for audio sakes. But like the thumbnail of it is very much Ben Long's hand on Clary's face, and it's I feel like it should have been worth more than just $1,000.
Yeah, exactly. So, very, very lucky. We'll see if the AFL want to intervene because, that's just a bad look. Like, that's stuff you don't want going down in VFL or like state league, whatever levels. So,
definitely not.
Bit of poor form there.
The Rising Star.
But that takes us through.
It does. Sorry. But the Rising Star has not been announced as of yet. So if that comes through whilst we're going through the fixture, we will update on that. But we're going to jump over to the fixture because the ladder hasn't really not been that many changes. The only big change is Brisbane jumping up into the top 4 for the first time this season, which is good for them. But at this point, we may as well just run through the fixture for this week. Reminder to Australians that it is Mother's Day on Sunday. If you're able to go to the footy, if you're a footy family, think about going to the footy. That's what we do on our Mother's Days. I will be at this week's game. But in terms of the rest of the week, we're starting off with a big Thursday night clash over at Optus Stadium with Fremantle hosting the Hawks.
And what a prove yourself, after a couple of weeks of scary results, I would say, late comebacks and all that. You really can't expect to be doing that against a Hawthorn team who has pretty much been, despite the obvious draw outcome, has been very offensively potent, very consistent, very broadly good in their team structure. And it's going to be interesting because they said it's Fremantle at Optus. It's going to be a hard task regardless. And, despite the Hawks being a good outside shutting down team, I think Fremantle are ones where they only need a few opportunities to get a big return. So I think that swings the game a bit in Freo's favour. Obviously, it's going to be a very interesting ruck battle. Lloyd Meek probably up against his old team, depending on how they shape that contest.
That's another player that I forget has played for a second team.
It's really much how much, like, Hawthorn by far have the more lethal back half movement, whereas Fremantle have the more damage when they get in that forward line. And I think that's going to dictate the match, like which team can convert more of their back half movement. Because forward half, as I said, both teams, they can go all right. And I think stoppages is going to be interesting too, because obviously Jai Newcomb is pretty much saying, I'm solo going to prevent Hawthorn's midfield from being statistically terrible, and is doing a very good job at it. Putting acts from like players like Nash and all that sort of thing. But as I said, up against the three-pronged of Young, Bolton, and
Sarong?
Brayshaw and Sarong.
Yeah.
I should say four-pronged.
Four-pronged.
Young's been playing a bit forward.
Fork.
Sort of. I'd say three-pronged because like Young and Bolton rotate probably, the same amount.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to stop. Again, just on the basis of a top 4 team matchup being at home, I'll give it to Fremantle, but not much is going to be in this contest, and probably the most enjoyable contest that people are going to want to sit down and watch.
Yeah, this is probably going to be the best game of the round, I'll be honest. Just going off of knowing what's ahead, this will probably end up being the best 50-50 game of the round.
Yeah.
I'd probably go Freo purely just based on the fact that it is home turf. And I know Hawthorn don't have a great track record at Optus, at least up against Freo over the past couple of years. Obviously, West Coast different story.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would definitely lean towards Freo in that regard. I think in terms of one-on-one matchups, it is fairly even for the most part. For Hawthorn, it will probably depend on if Gunston is back. I think Chol is still at least like maybe 2 weeks off from his minor injury.
Yeah, I think it's got a little bit.
But if Gunston's back, that does make a bit of a difference in terms of their functionality up forward. But I think, yeah, it's just purely based on that fact. I think Fremantle are definitely kind of probably the ones leading in that matchup. But we've got another doubleheader on our Friday night. With starting off at the Gabba with Brisbane hosting Carlton. Again, that'll be an absolute blowout. No one should expect anything less, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
There's not really too much to say on that one, unless there is something you want to say on that one.
Not really. I don't know. I'm just glad that this is a game where we can ignore Carlton being on a Friday night. And Carlton fans can just watch the first bit where they're normally all right and then tune to the other game.
Yes, because the other game will be a little bit more interesting with Port Adelaide hosting the Western Bulldogs at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, so again, both teams, I think, have sort of... Well, I guess the Bulldogs are starting to come back on form. Port have found form in the last 4 weeks, but they're both desperate to translate some decent-ish performances into wins. Obviously, the Bulldogs want to reflect their ladder position of their dominance that they had earlier in the year, and Port Adelaide want to prove that their form, even though they've been having losses, is better than expected. And, it's going to be hard because, the Bulldogs, they do have a few more ins, and honestly, this matchup is one of the most uneven matchups in terms of, who wins is normally, head-to-head, whatever, it swings and roundabouts. But normally the team that wins absolutely blows the other team away. It's not normally a close contest. So Port, they need to be disciplined in the middle, not let Bulldogs get their clearance game going. And also, their defense has been really good, so it'll be interesting to see if Bulldogs can manage to have as high a scoring rate as they did in Freo, or against Freo, I should say. Whereas the Bulldogs, they've got the big task of having Georgiades holding him defensively accountable. But I also think on the ground level, they've done a decent job against the Tolls, but we'll sort of let to see their ground level presence, preventing ground level shots against opponents really come in. They are good when they win the ball back, but otherwise opponents are still scoring with relative ease. So for Port Adelaide, it's players like Joe Berry, Joe Richards, Matt Always, he might have an important role with Mitch Georgiades and Matt Whitlock still looking to contribute their normal amount with the lack of tall defensive units against the Western Bulldogs. I'm probably going to tip Port. Again, I think I'm just committed to tipping them, except for top 4 matchups, as my weird arbitrary tipping rules dictate.
Well,
but I'll let you decide if you actually want to go towards Port or
honestly, in
think the
terms
Western
of
Bulldogs might get a bit of revenge.
in terms of who could be playing for the Dogs, if Bond isn't in, if he does actually get rested for this game, that could make a huge impact. They might get Libba back, depending on if his concussion protocols are cleared. But they don't get Lob back for at least another 2 weeks.
They won't get Libba back.
They don't get O'Donnell back for at least another 3.
Libba went to surgery.
Oh yeah, that's right. He did, because there was something else, wasn't it? That's right.
That's the only reason he's not following the concussion, because he technically has to go back to an arbitrator to get back in. But they were like, oh well, we'll just have surgery.
The injury list hasn't been updated since last week, so that's what I was basing this off of.
Oh yeah, but basically he's getting his knee repair, and by the time he's back, the concussion, unless there's any further signs of being impacted, they'll know if he has concussion symptoms by then.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
If there is anyone to come back from the injury list, it could be Connor Butterick, maybe. but I don't know if they're going to put him through the VFL first. Otherwise, yeah, they're still going to be struggling in terms of personnel in defence, which Port Adelaide could very much take advantage of. If Bont doesn't play, again, that's one less key player in that midfield that Port could take advantage of in terms of just how they traverse the ball through that midfield. I'm not entirely sure
Sweet
who
against
Port
his
could
old
get
side
back.
will be interesting.
That too.
Because yeah, as I said, they're struggling. The Western Bulldogs, as I said, is good to get English back, but I don't think they're gonna have him. Maybe they will play the whole game. I think that they might force another makeshift ruck. Depends if Emmett has enough juice in the tank. As I said, his effort has really dropped off.
Yeah, looking
not
at
his
your
fault,
injury
really.
list, Tom Cochrane, Harrison Ram.
Oh, they're all long term.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anyone coming back soon.
It's only Cochrane, Ram, maybe Manny Liddy. That are like and Rats could potentially be back as well, 1 to 2 weeks, according to the injury list from last week. So could potentially be in for this week. If not, it'll be next week. He'll probably come back, which is good signs. However, the rest of the players on your list are very much long term. Not great. Like especially Rosie. Like missing Rosie for that long is very sad. But otherwise,
the only like positive is like the long-term injuries are more depth players, but like we also want a lot of our young depth players because that's who we're trying to put blood into. So,
like it's Josh Sin, Lukosius, Ollie Lord. They're kind of the bigger ones. Pal Pepper, he would hopefully be back. He's on track to I think come back post-bye. But then, Rosie is like the bigger one that you're really missing.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of this matchup, honestly, I think Port is not that bad of a tip. Depending on if Bond's out, is whether I'll lean Dogs or not. But I definitely think there are very much strong avenues for Port to win in this matchup.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump over now.
I think it's the second exciting contest on paper. To be honest.
Honestly, looking at the rest of these
maybe
games,
St Kilda Suns, depending on what the teams want to do in that match.
That's very debatable.
That's a variable match.
Purely for the fact that's up in Darwin. Like that.
That
very much favours the Suns, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But we'll jump over to our first Saturday game with North Melbourne facing off against Sydney at Marvel. With what we've seen from North as of late, I definitely think they could make this an interesting contest. But just purely for the way the Sydney play, they should win this outright.
Yeah. It'll be a Geelong style match where I think a period they're going to get blown out, and I really can't see their defense holding up against, like Charlie Kerner should have more opportunities. Obviously, Marty's been feasting, and Rosas. I think they did defend the ground a bit better, so maybe Rosas doesn't quite have 7 goals, but yeah, as I said, I think they'll find plenty of goal-scoring avenues. As I said, Sydney is probably going to score somewhere between 100 and 125 points. It's just if North Melbourne can at least get 90s plus alongside with them. And I think they're more than capable with them. They're going to have a respectable contest in the midfield. The more they can restrict that, the more they're able to hold in on the contest. But again, like Sydney's outside movement is far superior. And while I do think there's improvements for North in that regard, especially offensively, defensively, it's hard to see Sydney not scoring. It's not just the back six; it's a bit further up as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that North Melbourne's defenses won't hold up against Sydney's strong forward line and how quick they are at their movement. However, I think the midfield will be a very fun battle to watch. And I think if North can get the ball into their forward 50, I think they will actually have decent avenues of score. I don't think they will be hampered too much by Sydney's halfback movement. I think Sydney will give them a lot of respect, which will be really good to see. Honestly, I'd love to see North actually have some very decent forward performances this week. But I think just overall, Sydney are by far and away the better team. They shouldn't let a win slip here, but it definitely could be a fun contest.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now for a dire but at least even contest. Shall we head to NG Stadium?
Yes, the
Got
Giants
the Giants
hosting
heading up against
the
Essendon.
Bombers. I want to say this should be a very convincing win for the Giants. Everything on paper tells you that it should be, but just with the way their performances have kind of been as of late, I don't have that much faith in them right now. I'll be honest. I don't have that much faith in the Bombers either.
Technically,
So
yeah.
I'm probably gonna go Giants anyway. But
Hmm.
I'm not really liking what I'm seeing.
It's technically one of those games where I think Essendon actually oh, maybe not their strength, but they can dominate the Giants midfield unit. And the Giants do play on the ground, which do favor Essendon a lot more because again, we mentioned that their outside movement stoppage is pretty poor. So for the forward half defense, I think Essendon have a really big claim. Obviously, back half movement, the Giants are going to get their ball inside 50. They're going to find enough opportunities. It's just how their forward line acts up. So again, as long as the cleaner this game is in the forward half, the more likely the Giants are to win. But if Essendon just scrap it out, there is a slim hope that they might be able to win. And I don't think there is a chance that, yeah, if Giants just get their back half game going and hit up the tall targets, Essendon are going to get blown out. But yeah, I think they can keep with them. I reckon there's not that much distance between the two sides, but it's hard to say that there's not a distance all the same.
Yeah, it's obviously we know how the Bombers function right now, and they're not in a great position. But just the Giants have so much they need to clean up in terms of proving themselves again to be a decent team. It's hard to kind of adjudicate. You want to have faith that the Giants will win this outright because they should be the better team. But there's just the lack of functionality in that forward line is really disappointing, and especially because it's Jake Stringer going up against his old team as well. You want to see a really good performance from him. Honestly, I don't even know if he's in right now. I think he could be injured for all I know. I haven't checked. I'm pretty sure he is.
What, Stringer?
Yeah.
No, Stringer was fine. I don't think he picked up anything in the last game.
No, I don't think so either. I just couldn't remember at all because it felt like it was a non-sighting for some of that game. I want to see Essendon have a little bit more of a competitive fight against the Giants, knowing that they're lacking in some areas. But you want to assume the Giants should win this outright.
Yeah, exactly. Shall we go on to the contest we sort of talked about earlier?
Yes.
Down at TIO Stadium in Darwin.
Well, you say down. It's the northernmost point in terms of grounds that we play in the AFL.
Sound like my dad. He's always telling me off for saying things are down. I say things are down.
I say down a lot.
All the time.
It's fine. But yes, the Suns are hosting the Saints in Darwin. The Suns have an extremely good track record for the amount of games that have been played in Darwin so far since it's been a regular season thing. I don't think, from memory, they've actually lost a game up there. If they have, it would be much earlier in the kind of runs that have been played up there. But in terms of pure matchups, this should be a very even contest. I think the weather will play a massive part because St Kilda probably will not be used to that kind of temperature because again, they don't play up there. They barely play in Queensland as it is. So obviously the Suns have a much better.
St Kilda haven't actually played at TIO. They've only played at the other one, Traeger Park.
Ah, yes, that's right. The one that's Alice Springs, right? Traeger Park.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Is that Traeger? No, it might be Mars actually. Whatever it's called.
Mars is Ballarat.
Mars is Ballarat. Okay, yeah. Eureka. Anyway, but as you were saying earlier, also, the Suns are 8-1 at TIO Stadium.
I knew they had lost one game. I just couldn't remember if it was early in kind of the games that they've been playing up there, or if it's more recent.
I tried to look, but I couldn't quite find.
I was actually talking about this matchup again with my mate when we were talking about the ruck game, the rucks and stuff, and it was I remember the games last season when I was over in Perth and we watched the Suns play the Hawks up there,
Yeah.
and
Bulldogs, I thought.
or was it Bulldogs? It was one of
No,
the
no,
two.
it might have
They
been the
played like
Hawks.
2 weeks in a row. I'm
One of
pretty
them.
sure. So I knew it was one or the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun game to watch. And I think this one could be
Do you
very
want to know
similar.
yeah,
Yeah, go on.
the 3 undefeated teams at TIO Stadium?
Yes, I do. I'm pretty sure we're one of them. In fact.
Yep. Carlton, West Coast, and Richmond.
Yep. I only know that because of the
one
fact
each.
that we played Dreamtime up there, which was
Yep.
was a very fun contest at the time. But the fact that Carlton and West
Yeah.
Coast are also kind of undefeated up there is very weird.
Funny. Again, 1 win. Who cares?
Yeah.
But like, yeah. In terms of the actual game, though,
Yeah.
I think technically it should suit the Saints. Very long and direct team. Obviously, they don't muck around, and with Darwin, territory's normally at a premium. Tends to be a bit crazy. But it is hard to tip against the Suns, who have so much history there. It's a very hard game to play against. Ground to play in. Obviously not if you're Carlton, Richmond, or the Eagles.
Yes.
But yeah, so it will be important for St Kilda to make the most of their forward 50 entries. It'll be also interesting to see if the tolls dominate the game, because again, it sometimes can be hard where it can be advantaged out of the tolls just because like those clutch contested marks, you only need occasional ones to stick to get a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, it does open up St Kilda's ground level play, because it's obviously on the flip side hard to get intercept marks at the same time. So I actually think that this could be a very even match. There's like a lot of permutations, but I think I'll just back in the Suns because it's safe, and I don't trust the Saints.
Yeah.
Suns. I can see the Saints winning.
Suns are very much a safer ship in this regard.
I think it's a 65% Suns.
I think their history up in Darwin also does favour them a lot more. But I think, St Kilda, there are definitely avenues for St Kilda to win in this one. I think their matchups, both one-on-one and just kind of around the ground in general, are really good into the Suns. I think if this was played either on the Gold Coast or in Victoria, I think it would be a little bit more favourable of a matchup to St Kilda, overall. Purely because it's played in Darwin, I think it does lean very much more into the Suns' favour. But yeah, it's definitely one of the more interesting matchups of the round. Maybe even the third highest out of the other two that we were also considering to be the best games of the round.
Well, the next one might be interesting, but yeah, as I said, it really depends on how one team's offense can get firing. Do you have anything more to say about that game, or shall we move on?
No, I think we're good to move on. We're going to jump over to the MCG now for a big Saturday night clash with Geelong hosting.
Also being played at the same time.
Yes, also played at the same time. Geelong and Collingwood.
Yeah, so again, the big question is, can Collingwood keep up with a normally firing Cats? Because again, if Geelong have any semblance of ball movement or offensive going in this game, it's going to be hard to see Collingwood keep up. But the big caveat is that we've seen Port with their offensive half crushing of Geelong. Collingwood can employ that. So it's can Collingwood just win by restricting ball movement, which hasn't quite been their forte this year. But they have had it in their arsenal in previous years. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can do that. Obviously, I think Geelong are going to, most likely have a bit of threat to this match. So
I think,
it'll be interesting to see.
I think Collingwood's midfield. Oh, yep, good. So in terms of just Collingwood, I'm kind of just going to be yapping on myself for a bit here. Don't mind me. I think Collingwood, in terms of their midfield, I think they've been playing a little bit more tight this season. I think just the way that they have been, granted, side bottom being out, it isn't going to help them. Pendle's likely being rested this week also isn't going to help them. But just the way that they've been playing in terms of being able to nullify movement in players' midfield, in opposing teams' midfields, I think that plays really well into how Geelong transition the ball out of their midfield onto the outside. Again, you've got players like Bailey Smith and doing a lot of that running. Brian Myers as well. Looking fantastic. So that is a way for Collingwood to kind of nullify Geelong's speed and is the way that they move the things. In terms of one-on-one matchups, forward end to back end, I think it favors Geelong a lot more. Like Collingwood's forward line it feels very makeshift still, even though it does function fairly well. I just think Geelong's defense is kind of in a similar position, although it's probably a little bit more refined. And on the opposite direction, you come up against Jeremy Cameron and Shannon Neal. Like you don't really have, and Collingwood don't really have those kinds of defensive players to match up properly against on those sorts of tools. So that's just something they have to play mindful of. They probably have to play a little bit more ground ball to try and get around that, or like force Geelong's inside forward 50 entries to be very wide or very loose. And that might be the only other way they're able to kind of nullify that sort of impact. But then again, that plays into Geelong's small forwards and how impactful and how profound that they have been in terms of their output. Like, there's so much more that they can really do. And, like, it's just Geelong have just such an interesting forward line playing against Collingwood. But I've been yapping the entire time, by the way. Don't stress.
Okay, cool.
Just the way that Geelong's forward line is structured plays so much better into Collingwood's defense rather than the other way around. Because, like, if Collingwood try and play low ball,
yeah,
and in preventing like their forward 50 entries of going high for Shannon Neal and Jeremy Cameron, that just further plays into Geelong smalls and how good they are. So it's really hard if they struggle to nullify the inside 50 entries. Like Geelong could easily go on a tear, which is not the greatest of things.
Yeah, but obviously it's been fairly close contests in recent times. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But as you mentioned, like it's very hard because, as I said, I think while Collingwood, I'll say, is still a decent defensive team. Yeah, I think just areas where Collingwood's dropped off a tiny bit. And I think just in general, I just don't see them competing as much against like their better offensive teams. But yeah, the defensive teams, I can see them.
Yeah, I was kind of saying that.
So, as I said, it's literally just unless Collingwood's offense goes on a blistering tear, it's going to be very hard to see them.
I was kind of saying that like their midfield has been playing very much tighter defensively, of recent. Although with side bottom out and Pendlebury likely not playing, actually, he's a 50-50 on not playing, to be fair, because it is against Geelong. It is at the MCG, which this will be a game. If he does play, this will be the game where he equals the all-time games record, of course. Which honestly, look, side tangent, even though we are running a little bit long on time, I still think that Boomer Harvey could have played a lot longer if North didn't force him out.
Yeah.
So the record should be a lot higher than what it currently is, which is very disappointing, to be honest. But I really do appreciate that, like in this modern era, players' bodies have been are getting a lot better at being managed to be able to extend their careers, like Pendles has and like Sidebottom has. Like, and it's been really cool to see more players getting into that upper echelon of amount of games.
Yeah. It can only happen to like the MCG based teams, though.
It is because the less you travel, the more likely you can have.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still an insane feat, and even like you said about the Boomer Harvey, it just shows like there's still those random luck elements and good time, good place. I don't
remember which game it was, but there was a player from one of the games this week who hit his 250th. And he's like the 300 and something player to hit 250 plus. Like it's out of the thousands of AFL players that have come through the system over the years, only a quote unquote handful have made it to 250 plus games, and it's really weird to think about in terms of like the longevity of players.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, in terms of this matchup, I think Geelong probably should be the convincing win on this side. But I think there are ways for Collingwood to be able to nullify their movement. It'll just be about whether that can be sustained for 4 quarters.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, shall we go on to the Sunday matches? And we're heading
yes,
off to Marvel Stadium to
we
open
are.
Mother's Day.
Unlike yesterday or Sunday, just for note, there are 2 games in Victoria on Sunday this week compared to none last week. But we are starting at Marvel Stadium with the Demons hosting the West Coast Eagles. Again, this should be a pretty one-sided affair for the D's, considering how they've performed as of late. However, it is at Marvel, and I think they're not the biggest fans of this ground. That's because I think it's a tighter ground that doesn't favor too much into their outside movement. But again, they're playing the Eagles. That's kind of all that really needs to be said in that kind of regard.
Yeah, and Melbourne actually have a losing record at Marvel. I still have the stadium thing open.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Technically, the winningest team at Marvel is Sydney, believe it or not, at 74% win rate.
Interesting.
25-9. So, yeah, actually a lot of interstate teams, except West Coast, have a good time at Marvel. So that's a bit interesting.
Well,
anyway.
there isn't.
Yeah, Melbourne should get the job done.
Isn't too much to cover there. So we'll jump over to the last game of the round. I will be at this game, as it is Richmond hosting the Adelaide Crows at the MCG. This is the 9th anniversary of the 2017 Grand Final. However, it's not exactly a milestone anniversary, and we're not exactly the same team back then.
Fans think of it that way.
I only thought about it purely for the fact, one, it's at the MCG, and then I just happened to look at the date at the same time. But yeah, I would assume that because Adelaide is by far and away a better team, they should get the win here fairly convincingly. But from what I've seen from us over the past couple of weeks, I definitely think we can challenge them a little bit better. I definitely think having Bolter and OHB in that ruck rotation favors us a lot better against their ruck matchups, even whether they play Riley O'Brien or not. I don't think that matters all too much, I'll be honest. It'll just be around the ground that will very much struggle, like, again, trying to shut down their tolls, even though Tex won't be playing. Like, we still have to contend with Thilthorpe. And, then you have to deal with...
Maybe Doherty? Fogarty.
Yeah, and then you still have to deal with Fogarty. You still got to deal with Rochelle, Saligo, and all these other movement players. Neil Bullen, when he wants to push up, is very dangerous. Rankin as well. And then
I think the real winning thing would be the inside midfield. I think Richmond can actually contend with a lot of the Crows center bounced squad. So
the other thing that I think we could very much succeed in is if we get clearances into inside 50s. I think our forward line is slightly better structured right now than the Crows, purely for their injuries. Like Worrell is kind of the only one at the moment that's kind of like a key defensive player that's kept in terms of their core, because again, they're now missing
Butts as well. Yeah,
they're now missing 2 with injury if Butts stays out. So that could make a bigger impact in terms of how our forward line may function. But in terms of just overall, I think the Crows should get a convincing win here.
Yeah. Nah, it's pretty much it. There's like some minor wins, and so Adelaide, they're getting healthier, but they still always have a bit against them, it seems. It's very hard to see them getting that much momentum, but it also makes getting this extra win, 2 wins in a row, all that more important as they want to climb back up the ladder.
Yes, and just before we move on to our outro, the rising star has come through. It is not Sam Cumming. It is, in fact, Jack Whitlock.
Jack Whitlock.
Whitlock.
That's a nice little surprise.
Honestly,
I think it was
14 touches, 3 score involvements, 4 marks, with 2 of them being contested, 93% game time. Like, it might have been a lot. It might have been a 1-point loss, but he had a fantastic outing in the Showdown.
Yeah, actually, it's weird. I think he had a solid game. I think it was very late. He presented well, and he had a pretty rough time. As said, the 2 main Adelaide defenders matched up pretty well. So, pretty deserving. I think this is almost a bit of an overall effort one. Probably theoretically there was a better performer in terms of pure stats, but it's still pretty good And I said I've been very impressed with the maturity and advancement of Jack Whitlock's progression. I think it's definitely ahead of where I thought it would be at this point. Like last year was fine. Like it's very obvious to see he wasn't going to like break into the long term side in his first year. But the fact that he's considering doing it in his second is a testament to probably how hard he's worked and how much he is developing as a player.
Yeah, and we mentioned it kind of before when we were talking about the port game itself, that like he's so much more ahead in his development time than his brother at the moment over at North. And it just goes to show like the different systems and like how each of them kind of function, and like what Port really needs out of him right now compared to what North need out of his brother is very different. And like he's very much succeeding in terms of like ticking the boxes that Port need him to.
Yeah, because I don't even know where he's playing in the VFL, whether he's playing as a forward or defense. So yeah, as I said, I'm not really sure about. Crap, which one do we have? We have Jack, don't we?
You've got Jack. They've got Matt.
Yeah, they've got Matt Whitlock.
Yes.
So yeah, I've got no idea where Matt Whitlock is playing.
Who aren't even the only sets of twins that were drafted in that year, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure there was another set. The Camporellis. There you go.
Yeah.
That are both at Carlton.
The Camporellis, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, he seems to be playing in the back pocket.
Which makes
VFL.
sense, actually.
Although he has changed to full forward.
Oh, okay. He must be doing a bit of... They might be doing a bit of trialing just purely for like injury and stuff, I would say.
Yeah. He's actually hit the scoreboard a lot, so... What is it? Yeah. He's got 6 goals. 6 goals, 7 in the VFL. So, yeah. Anyway, we might see him. We might not. Again, North's forward line isn't that big a concern.
No, not right now. They're actually looking pretty good up forward, which is a good thing. But that does indeed bring us to the end of the episode. Thank you all so much for liking, commenting, subscribing, and just coming to hang out with us this week. Are you up to much this week, or are you pretty chill?
Ooh, I don't think I am. I think it's just sort of thing where I'm just sorting out a few things. But otherwise, yeah, as I said, I'm just planning to chill. Again, I'll watch all that football, especially on Saturday, and then try and do something nice for my mum. I have to go shopping tomorrow because I wasn't able to get anything on the weekend because I go to Fremantle a lot. Normally buy something there, but I went to a concert straight after, so find something nice for my mum.
That sounds like a good plan. For me, I'm just going to be continuing to pack up the apartment in preparation for the rest of the move. Fair chance we'll probably move a lot of the smaller stuff on Mother's Day on Sunday before going to the footy, which would be really nice. It'll be a good time, even though we'll probably lose to the Crows. But otherwise, there's not too much else going on for me this week other than like work and stuff. So it's just, just kind of coasting through at the moment until the move is all done, and then I'll get to actually have a little bit more freedom in terms of going out and doing things again, which would be nice. Yeah. There isn't really, I don't think there really is much else we need to cover. So once again, thank you all so much. We're looking forward to the games ahead, and we will see you all next week. Take care.